lasagna. That 666, that's gematria. With the cleans, with the kids on genitalia. Yeah, they filming and they stalking, no they watching ya. No they watching ya, don't let them pry on ya. Inside your fucking head like some Tylenol. Death by numbers, area 51. They try to shut you up when you want to some.
I think I'm okay. How about
Good
you?
stuff, yeah. Just slept really good last night, shockingly. I haven't been really sleeping well. I think I got one of those smart meters outside my apartment, so...
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, we could go all day about that, but...
Cooking your brain.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. They put them all over the place, and I see them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yesterday, my girlfriend's cooking while I got the microwave going, and her brain is 5 inches away from the microwave. I'm like, do you know what's going on right now with all that? And she's like, what? What's wrong? I'm just like, oh my God.
You're like, where do I start?
Yeah. But yeah, man. All right, let's see. All right, I got the audio going. And then I woke up a little early this morning just so I could put together my thoughts. Because there's a lot I want to discuss with you, man. There's basically 2 guys that I agree with the most in this whole movement, and that's you and Max Egan. I mean, I feel like with you guys, like, I agree with you guys on so much. Like, every podcast you put out, I'm just like, nailed it. Fucking, and then Max Egan puts out a show, I'm like, nailed it.
Thank you. I'm in agreement on the Max Egan thing. You know what's funny is, have you ever heard of Joy Camp?
Joy Camp. It sounds familiar.
It's a group of guys that are all actors, and they would do these little comedy bits, like 5-minute videos. Kind of like if you know who J.P. Sears is, the redheaded guy with like the long ponytail.
Yes.
Things, and Ryan, what's his name, in New York, who does the kind of like woke comedy that's like it's a parody of the insanity. Well, Joy Camp is like that too. They've been doing it for years, and their videos are fucking hysterical. And Benny Wills is one of the 4 guys in that group. Okay. And he's a fantastic guy. He was an actor. He was the host of like Red Pill Expo. He's the host of Anarchapulco and everything. I mean, he's a good dude. So I met him, and we became friends. And he invited me to his wedding, and that was not this October, but last October. And I didn't know anybody there. And at this wedding, I didn't know anybody there personally, but I knew who some of the people were because I recognized them. I got seated next to Richard Gage from Architects and Engineers.
Oh my God.
Truth. And I literally had a chapter in my book about that was titled Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. So Richard and I are friends, but I talked his ears off. I felt so bad about it. But about halfway through the wedding reception, I went outside and smoked a joint with Max Egan.
No way! That's so badass.
And I got so fucked up from it.
Wow.
From him because I was afraid I was going to embarrass myself.
Oh, dude, that's so badass.
Dude, man, he's like a fucking shaman or something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's like he's got that like elder energy. Where
yes.
He's seen it all and been through it all and has thought it all and has had conversations about it all, and I love him too, man. He's as cool in real life as he is, as you would hope he would be.
Yeah,
You'd be disappointed if you found out. You're like, oh my God, Max Egan's a dick. Totally
right?
He's just, he shows he's at the wedding. He's like Benny Wills, like one of their closest friends. And,
okay.
Played guitar and everything at the wedding ceremony. It was really nice.
Wow.
But I'm flattered that you put me in a category with Max Egan because I feel the same way about him.
Yeah, man. I mean, I listen to you guys, and I just agree with you guys the most. I mean, the guy that I listen to the most is Sam from Tinfoil Hat because he was my wake up experience because I used to listen to Joe Rogan a lot, and I really valued his podcast, and I kind of want to talk to you about him later on, because I mean, dude, he has just taken a total nosedive, in my opinion, with Peter Hotez and all of these clowns that he has on. Yeah. And so
I mean, I'm tired of seeing Mike Baker on Joe Rogan.
oh my God! And then
I
I was listening to his one with Dave Chappelle and the other guy and Donnell, Donnell Rawlings
about the vaccine,
dude. And Donnell was saying some truth, and then
I know he was.
yeah, and then Joe was just like, oh, but I had Mike Baker on, and he says that there's no way. I'm just like, oh my God, Joe. And, you know, I love how they bring on Mike Baker as, like, the all-American guy. You know, he's got a kid named Muggsy, and he's just a fucking fishing guy and up in Wyoming, you know. It's just like, oh, give me a fucking break with the CIA fucking cover story bullshit, you know?
Bully, man. It's so funny. I'll be on Tinfoil Hat on Tuesday. Well,
no shit.
Record it on Tuesday, but then I don't know. I was talking to Sam about it yesterday. He said, "Come do it. Like, let's do it Tuesday." I'm like, "You had me scheduled for Wednesday, but then your booker canceled it because he didn't want to. He said you didn't want to do anything over Thanksgiving break." He's like, fuck my booker. Let's do it on Tuesday." I'm like, "Then let's do it on Tuesday. I don't care."
Great. Yeah, man. That's how I first found you, was on Tinfoil Hat. So I was listening to Joe Rogan, and then he had Eddie Bravo on, and Eddie starts going off about Flat Earth or something. And Joe kept cutting him off, telling him to stop talking about it. I'm just like, I want to hear more about this. And this was back in like 2016 or 2017. And then he's like, well, I was just on Tinfoil Hat. So if you want to listen to that, then you can. So I was just like, well, Tinfoil Hats. And then I searched, and then I found Sam. And then the first episode I listened to was actually the Propaganda Report, Monica Perez and Brad Binkley.
Yeah.
And so I had them on already, and that was a great conversation.
I was on their show last week.
Yep, and I listened to it, and I was just like, fuck yes, dude, because, again, like, more people that I, like, completely love. The Propaganda Report, they're so good, and they're such good researchers. Yeah. Like, I just had to talk to them.
I'm just trying to keep up, you know, with all these other people out there, like great researchers and guys that have amazing podcasts. You know, talking to Sam about that yesterday, we had like we don't talk all that often, but we do the Union of the Unwanted show together, you know. So
yeah.
But yesterday afternoon we talked for like 45 minutes, and we were getting into it about all of the shows, about podcasting in general. And he's like, dude, I keep getting approached by people with a shitload of money that are interested in being involved in investing in podcasts and everything. I was like, well, where are these? I don't know these people. Fucking introduce me. You know what I mean? He's like, there's a lot of money flowing into podcasts. He's like, everybody that's doing it, you know, right now, they're in the right spot because things are happening in that world. I was like, well, as long as it's not like a trap, you know, to get you to where you can't, you know, you go to work for Spotify or someplace and then they censor what you're saying, you know, as long as they let you, you know, continue to do that. I'm interested in making some money from this, but you know, but his show's huge. You know, Tinfoil Hat is like number, I don't know, last time I saw on Chartable, it was like in the top 40 of comedy in the U.S., which is like the toughest segment to crack into, and he's doing really well. So
yeah, no, I mean, and I don't agree with Sam on some of his shit, because I feel like he's a covert Q guy, but then he's like, oh, but I'm not a Trump tard. Like, Trump's done a bunch of bad things, but if you look at Q, and I'm just like, oh, I'm just like, come on, Sam. But I mean, he's hilarious, and he did an episode about what is it, JP Cooper or DB Cooper?
DB Cooper.
Yeah, he just did an episode on that, and he had me. I was driving in my truck for work, and I almost ran myself off the road. I was crying because I was laughing so hard at what the shit he was saying on that episode.
I saw that it was up. I saw that it was up now, but I haven't watched it yet.
Oh my god, it's so funny. He was just like the guy, DB Cooper, is just like, I have a bomb. And Sam's like, could you imagine being the guy next to him? Just be like, what? Oh, dude, I was laughing my ass off. But yeah, so you were on Tinfoil Hat. And then, like, what got me, because you were being interviewed for Octopus of Global Control.
Right.
And You were talking about the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act and how it legalized propaganda and how the government could use propaganda against us. And like, mind you, I'm new into all of this stuff. I mean, I've explored alternative ways of thinking, and when Trump got elected, one of the guys that I follow, his name's Zachary Hubbard. He posted like a 9/11 doc to his thing. He's like, impeach and arrest 9/11 insider Donald Trump. So then I watched that and I was just mind blown. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, 9/11 was a false flag. And then I started watching things about lizard people, and then I was just like, this is too fucking weird. This is too fucking freaky. I'm like, I just put all that shit to the side. So
there's various degrees of this stuff, you know. I
mean,
you can go down the lizard people rabbit hole, and it's fun and it's exciting, and it may be, you know. Listen, man, it may be I don't know if you ever watched or saw the Howard Stern interview with Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins, but Billy Corgan tells Howard Stern this insane story of being at a party at one of these record label douchebag parties in Hollywood, and turning around, and the guy standing right next to him who's looking right at him turned into a reptilian and turned back into a person. And he's like, I can't explain what I saw. And that's what I saw. And I wasn't drunk, and I wasn't high, and I wasn't making it up, and I wasn't... He said this guy just had this smirk on his face, and he turned and looked at him. This guy shape-shifted into a reptilian for like 3 seconds, and then turned back and gave him a little nod, and he said he was just shitting himself. Like, and it was... He's like, I can't explain. I just can't explain.
Oh my God. No, I never heard that.
Yeah. Yeah, you can find... I mean, and he you know, he explains it in the best way you could if something like that happened to you, which is, I'm not crazy. I don't know how to explain it. I know what I saw. That's what I saw. You know. Oh
my God. Yeah, I mean, like that was still when YouTube was a platform where you could find those kinds of videos, and not something like lizard people debunked, or lizard people conspiracy theorists crazy, or like, you know, all that kind of stuff. You could just go down the rabbit hole and find one after another. Like, there was this news reporter like in Savannah, Georgia or some shit, black guy, and then you know, it's where the bug flies into his mouth. He's like, oh shit.
Watch the intro to my podcast.
Yes.
The video intro. If you watch the video intro to my podcast, I took a clip from that news article that news report that you're talking about. It's a website called Melody Sheep, and in Melody Sheep they took two different reports. They took and they auto-tuned it. It was two different reporters, both black guys. One guy, that guy in Savannah, Georgia, with the bug flies in his mouth, and then another guy who's a weatherman reporting in Houston, and he's a black guy, and he's standing on a bridge, and he's pulling on his tie, and he's talking about the traffic, and they've auto-tuned it and put music into it, and it's this hilarious song. So if you search Melody Sheep WTF, you'll see the video, and I used a clip from that video in my intro. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
But he said, what happened here in Savannah, Georgia was motherfucker. You know,
motherfucker! Man, I'm tired of this.
Yeah. And the other one is a guy, and you can tell it was filmed like in the 80s or something. And he's pointing at the traffic, and he's saying, you know, in Houston, you know, city the size of Houston, there's always traffic. And he says, so what's the big fucking deal? What the fuck are we doing out here? And they auto-tuned it. And it's fucking hysterical. I'm just saying, look it up.
I'm definitely gonna check it out, man.
Yeah. All right, let's start recording, or else I'll be bullshitting with you forever.
Oh, I mean, I've been recording.
Oh, okay.
I took a page out of Ricky because I just had him on.
Ricky just starts recording. The last time I was on with Ricky, our interview went 2 days. It was a 2-day interview.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because we were talking about sports and all kinds of stuff for like an hour, and then he's like, "All right, now I want to get on the topic that we really want to talk about." I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Shit, I don't know if I have enough time," and it's like, "Can we do like the rest of it tomorrow?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." So it's funny because Ricky always says he's like, I talk a lot, which he doesn't really talk as much as maybe he thinks he does. But we just started talking about all kinds of bullshit, and next thing you know, we were like, oh, we have to record the rest of this another time. So.
Dude, I mean, as a listener of Ricky's, I feel like he talks as much as he thinks he does.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, dude, sometimes it's just like, Ricky, please let the guest like fucking talk. But I mean, like, I love Ricky to death, and we had a great conversation. But I mean, he's a 5-tool player. You know what I'm talking about? He can talk about anything under the sun. I mean, I didn't expect for us to talk about like ketosis and diet for an hour of our podcast. The first hour was just all about diet and like psychotropic drugs and ketosis and all of this stuff. I was just like, damn, I wasn't expecting that. I had a whole list of questions I wanted to ask him, but we really didn't get to any of it in 2.5 hours.
That's funny. Well, I get it. I mean, I understand. I can talk to Ricky for hours. I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was actually in your guys' conversation. He was like, someone was bringing it up to me. He's like, I can't remember who I was talking to, but they were talking about like Edward Snowden, and he doesn't believe in chemtrails. So like, they just throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm like, that was me. I said that, and he like, it was your guys' conversation. But I'm just like, Ricky, that's not what I said, because we were just talking about how Edward Snowden was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and how I think that Edward Snowden is kind of a like a patsy, or like there's people that think that he was in the CIA and then he went over to the NSA to like screw with them and stuff like that. And then he went on Joe Rogan's podcast and was just like, fucking chemtrails aren't real, this isn't real, that's bullshit. I'm just like, dude, there's documentable evidence that we've been doing chemtrails since the 60s in Vietnam.
John Brennan sat in front of a panel and admitted it on camera.
Aerosol injections, or whatever he called it. Yeah, so I was just like, what are you talking about? So that's obvious, blatant disinfo. And like, so yeah, he exposed the NSA and all of that. But then what I told Ricky was, and Ricky, love you, man. But what I told Ricky was, I was reading this article that laid it out pretty clearly that Edward Snowden was actually kind of like a bait and switch move. What he was doing with the NSA and the CIA was so the NSA only had like 22 people who could access everybody's cameras and stuff like that, and obviously don't want that. We don't want anyone accessing our cameras and our private information and data and all of these things. But what Edward Snowden was in favor for was a bill that allowed tech companies to now have those powers of the NSA. So now it's thousands of people.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just like, dude, Edward Snowden, complete piece of shit, complete bait and switch. I'm like, fuck him. That's why I don't like him. It wasn't because he doesn't believe in chemtrails. I mean, like, good, he exposed the NSA to, like, the broader America and everything like that, but he didn't expose any new information. I mean, that stuff was already out.
It was a limited hangout. I mean, it was eye-opening. Well, it's a limited hangout in the same way the Epstein case sort of is too. It's like for the norm, for the, as Corbett calls them, like the normies, right? They're like, holy shit, the NSA is spying on us. But for people that have been, involved in this sort of thing, they're like, of course they are. I mean, they didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. And same with Epstein. Epstein is like all that. Like the average person is like, holy shit, they're running sexual blackmail operation rings. Like I never heard about any of that. And it's like, this has been going on for decades, and this guy in particular has been doing it for decades as well. So welcome to the party. So it's like, I'm grateful for an Edward Snowden or somebody that that Epstein gets into the news for all this stuff. I'm glad that it wakes up a lot of people to what's going on, but by no means is this supposed to be meant to be like a full understanding of how the security state works, like with the NSA. Like Edward Snowden told us some things, but he didn't tell us anything that guys like us didn't already know. Yeah. And same with the Epstein case. It's like, I'm glad you now recognize that this happens. I'm glad you know that our security services, like the CIA, don't have a problem using children as bait for sexual entrapment operations. They have no problem doing that. So congratulations on being aware of that. But now you need to really get into the Epstein case if you want to understand how it all works. Now you got to get deep into it, and you'll start to find that it's way darker than you think. So I'm grateful that these conversations are at least happening, and that's where I felt on the Q thing as well, which is I'm not a Q person. I'm not into it at all. I think it's a LARP and everything. But I will tell you this: if it gets normal people into thinking and seeing this conspiratorial stuff, I'm in favor of that. Where I'm not in favor of it is that they're immediately redirected to the Republican Party. As like,
and it pacifies them. It's like, wait for the plan, trust the plan. Trump's gonna take care of us. The storm is coming. It's like, give me a break.
Yeah, that was all stuff. To me, that was all instructions to sit back and do nothing.
Yep.
And I don't like that. If I feel like the instruction should be get involved, do something. It should be the opposite of sit back and trust the plan. It should be get the fuck up and do something about this. But that wasn't what it was, so that obviously threw me off. But like the premise, like the initial part of like people waking up that there's government fuckery going on, I'm in favor of all that. I'm in favor of people waking up to that. However they get to the party. But by no means should people be thinking that they're getting a full story by understanding Q or by reading the New York Post story on Jeffrey Epstein or by, reading the Guardian story on Edward Snowden. Like, there's more to all these things. This is just surface level stuff. So congratulations. To people, you're waking up, but don't start thinking just because you follow Q that you understand how all this shit works. Because if you understood how this all works, you wouldn't be following Q.
Oh yeah. And there's stages, like you said earlier. There's stages to the waking up process. Like when I was first getting into all of this, like I said, I mean, it was like lizard people and Anunnaki and like all of that stuff. And I was like, oh, this is all so cool. Like this is definitely real. And then you do a little more research and you're like, I don't really fuck with the Anunnaki stuff and like stuff like that. And so like, I feel like for Q people, hopefully they take that leap where it's like, and that's what I think will be really interesting. Like, I want to hear all these people who've been promoting Q and touting Q and all that stuff. If Trump just does take it up the tailpipe and step down and the investigations don't go anywhere, which I don't think will happen. I mean, I feel like Trump's coming back. I feel like Biden's not going to be president one way or another. They want mass chaos, and I feel like the only way for that to happen is Trump to be in office. And a lot of the stuff that he ushered in during his presidency, like red flag gun laws, taking the guns first, doing trials second, and all of these things, it pacified the Republican Party way more than Hillary Clinton ever could. Because if she tried to do any of that shit, there would have been riots outside of the White House, 1 million strong Republicans toting guns. But since Trump did it, nobody raises a stink. Yeah,
that's how they do it. They have the left president goes in and does a bunch of shit and fucks with the left, and it's their guy. He's their guy, like Obama, so they don't complain about it. And then the president on the right, like Trump, comes in and fucks with people on the right, but they don't complain about it either, like you said, because he's their guy. But if the left guy tried to do what Trump did, or the right person tried to do what Obama did, they'd be up in arms about this. How dare you? How dare you? But it's like, you get into an argument, and people say, hey, fuck Trump, and look, I'm no Trump supporter. I'm not on either one of these teams. Pretty clear about that. But people come up and they say, fuck Trump, and he's putting kids in cages and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, who built the cages?
Mm-hmm.
Obama did. Okay? So, like, I agree. Kids in cages. Not good optics, not good everything. But let's not pretend that it's only one side, So that's where I get into the problem with the hardcore left or even the hardcore Q guys, too. It's like what you're saying about the other side may be true, that they're reprehensible scumbags. In fact, it's probably true. But just don't forget that your team is run by scumbags as well. And that's where I have the biggest problem is when it's like the right, left, and everything, when they're like, that side is crooked and that side's dark. Joe Biden is stealing this election with their voting machines. He probably is. But let's not pretend like the Republicans wouldn't do this shit too.
Oh,
they need to. They have a candidate that's packing, stadiums or for people for Trump. Trump was, I mean, look, say what you want about the guy, but the guy packed it. He had support. He had enthusiasm behind him. Joe Biden couldn't get 8 people to show up at his rally, and you're expecting me to believe he got 80 million votes? Get the fuck out of here. That's crazy.
Yeah,
that
total bullshit.
Happen.
Yeah.
That's impossible statistically. It's just, and then 130-something thousand votes come in at 3:30 in the morning in Michigan, and they're all for Biden. Look, man, these are statistical impossibilities. There's something going on. Now, I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not counting the votes. I'm not involved in the vote counting machine. But my feeling on that whole election recount stuff is, whether you're on the left or the right, you should want them to do everything they need to do to go through this election and make sure that everything is fair and as clean as possible. Because what will happen if you don't do that is that if you're Biden and you just pretend that you're president and just say president-elect's office, from the office of president-elect, even though that doesn't exist, and you do all these things, there's going to be a huge segment of the population that's never going to believe that you're the real president. And you're going to have to deal with that for the next 4 years. So if you didn't steal this election, if you're Joe Biden and the left, and you didn't steal this election, then you should say, come on in, check everything. Check the machines, check this, check that, check. Fuck you guys. You guys think we stole it? We didn't steal it? You come in. Then I'm going to shut you up for good. But they're not doing that. Mm-hmm. They're saying, nothing to see here. Don't talk about it. If you talk about this, we'll silence you on social media. That's the response you get when you're trying to cover something up. That's not the response you have when you are confident in what has transpired. So I want the duly elected look, I don't fucking care one way or the other, let's be honest. But I don't want someone in there who stole it. And I think that the Biden campaign, I look at their behavior. Their behavior was like the last month of the campaign. They didn't act like they had any sense of urgency. They weren't concerned that nobody was showing up at their rallies. They called lids on all the press stuff, even for like a week at a time. Once the Hunter Biden laptop stuff came out
at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah. At 9:30 in the morning. Yeah, this is crazy. So it's like, well, once again, it doesn't prove anything. There's nothing scientific about this. But I'm just saying that from an observer's standpoint, that's inconsistent with how you would be behaving if you're like, we've got 1 month left of this election. We've been working our ass off. We got to sprint to the finish line. Let's have as many rallies as we can. I want to get on every TV show I want to talk to the nation. I want to do everything I can. Cram it all in. Now or never. They didn't do any of that. They hid. They hid from the press. Nobody showed up at their events. They stopped having them. And then you're going to get 80 million people? Fuck that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That can't. You're going to get 8 million more people to vote for you than voted for Obama?
Yeah.
And Obama was like a rock star. Chocolate Jesus. Man.
Yep.
He was out there, and everyone was like, even people on the right were like, man, I don't know who this guy, I'm not voting for this guy, but man, he is packing stadiums.
I remember being a kid and just watching Obama's speeches and like tearing up, like, dude, this guy is the shit. Like, we need to get Obama in. And then the night he was elected, my mom, who's like a staunch Republican, is just like, it's an abomination. I'm just like, good one, Mom. But I always thought that Barack Obama was like, dude, like, this is exactly what we need. This is gonna end racism. Like, this like, we're just ushering in like almost like the golden years of America, where, there's going to be no more racism. We got a black president. He says he's going to do all these things. And then none of that fucking happened. Citigroup fucking emails him and is like, this is who you're going to put in your fucking cabinet. And sure enough, they all get in the fucking cabinet. Yeah. And then, it's just business as usual.
Yeah. And that was a wake-up call for a lot of people that thought, oh, this is going to be great. I didn't fully fall for that, but I did think this was coming off of George W. Bush, and we had 8 years of a guy that was, partially lobotomized and had Cheney running the show for him, who's really scary dude, and they were kicking off wars and 9/11 and all, and so it was a transition out of that into something else, and at that point people were like, I don't care what else is coming. I just want something else. And it was like Obama. And then he came and talked about hope, 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 hope. Well, there's an interesting thing about hope. It's always in the future. It's never in the present.
Mm-hmm.
You never have to actually deliver on it as long as hope is out there. So he gave everybody hope. He did that hope thing. First thing I do, literally on day one, first thing I'm going to do is close Guantanamo Bay. Really? Really? Where's that? What happened? You didn't do that.
Yep.
What about, I'm going to end all these wars. You can take that to the bank. Yeah, really? Which bank is that? The banks that you gave $700 billion to?
Goldman Sachs, yeah.
or the banks that foreclosed on people's houses? Or the banks that pay you $400,000 to give a speech? Which banks would you like us to take it to?
Uh-huh.
So it's like he was just a very good con man, bullshit artist.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people that still don't believe that. They still don't see that. They think, oh well, he was a great unifier. No, he was great at talking about unifying people. He was great at talking about that. He was great at making you feel like he had your back and he was representing you. But look at the things that he did.
Mm-hmm.
Dropped so many bombs on the Middle East, they ran out of bombs. That sounds like a fake headline.
Yeah.
But it's true. They had to scramble to make more bombs. So it's like that's why Jeff Berwick calls him Barack Drone Bomber, because he's that's and then he goes and says, well, it turns out that I'm really good at killing people. And you're like, that's not something you're supposed to say out loud.
Yeah.
And so and then Trump comes, the great disruptor, right? And I'm in agreement with you.
And puts two Goldman Sachs execs in his fucking cabinet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Here comes the disruptor. Well, disrupting everybody else except never disrupting Wall Street, of course. We don't do that. It's fascinating for people to. I like to watch when people get very enthusiastic about a candidate, and then I watch them over time, like over the course of that candidate's presidency, and like after year 2 or year 3, you say, hey, how you doing with your Obama? So it's like, man, I don't know about this guy after all these years. I'm starting to think I might have made a colossal mistake. Oh, okay. So you see when these people that get super enthusiastic about their guy, and then they see what's really happening, they're like, oh, this is really disappointing. I thought he was better than that, or I thought this was going to be the change that we promised, or hope that we promised, and we just got more of the same, just repackaged, and now in a black face who dresses well and looks nice and is witty and seems smart and all these things.
His only scandal was a tan suit.
His only scandal was a tan suit. It didn't have anything to do with 90% civilian deaths from all the drone strikes and things like that. No, none of that. So it's just I tell you one thing, it's an interesting time to be watching all of this, because it's like people are getting rushed through, getting their black belts in conspiracy research quicker than ever now.
Oh yeah.
You see these things, that everything is happening at like an accelerated pace, and you're like, there's almost too much to focus on, especially in 2020.
Oh yeah, and like getting black belts. I was working for FedEx for a little over 2 years, and I had 6 to 10 hours a day just to cram podcasts into my brain, and so I cleaned out the tinfoil hat archive, and just went through all of these shows and diet, and just went down every single avenue in economics, which I want to have an economics discussion with you in a second here.
Okay, cool.
But getting into economics and health and nutrition and conspiracy and politics and all of these things, and it was just earth shattering, and to do all of this 6 to 10 hours a day, it's like every single day it was like a new paradigm was just exploded. And I wanted to ask you about your waking up process, because I know it's tired and all of that stuff, but it's so interesting to me because there's the NPCs and the people with the fluoridated brains and all that stuff, and then there's us. Why did we get to it? Is it just because we were exposed to it in one way or another? Is it because we have those types of brains. We're always searching for answers and stuff like that. So I'm always interested to hear someone's waking up story.
Yeah, look, I'd love to say that my waking up story was on the morning of September 11th, 2001, but it wasn't. It took a couple years before I sort of figured that there was something more to that. Probably 2005, 2004, 2005 maybe. Right around, that's right when I was getting into that. I think it was 2005. It was the infamous Thanksgiving dinner where I brought up 9/11 and watched the table turn on me at my in-laws' house at the time, and it was not pretty. They did not appreciate me bringing it up. I didn't really have the facts straight and everything, but I started to. From the financial component that woke me up was reading John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And I read that in March of 2007. And that really changed my life because that opened up my brain to this possibility of how debt could be used as a weapon.
Oh, yeah.
And how the IMF and World Bank used that to enslave countries. And at the time that I read this book, I was selling new homes in Las Vegas. And the market was just fucking booming. We were the second hottest market in the world behind Dubai. It was insanity. And what I realized was that people were coming into me and trying to buy houses, and and they'd fill out like this quick little mortgage application that I would send over to the lender, and there were guys that were like making $10 an hour, and were trying to buy like $400,000 homes, and they were getting approved for the mortgages. And I was like, God, how is this happening? Like, what? I couldn't figure it out. I knew it was going to be bad. I mean, I assumed it was going to be bad for these people, but I had sort of the same feeling that the buyer had, which is, well, shit, I guess you can afford it if they're giving you the loan. Like, they wouldn't give you a loan if they really thought that you were going to default on it. But what I later found out was that the banks and the mortgage industries had sort of the same scam going that the IMF and World Bank had, which is like extend credit to people that that can't afford it, get them in a situation where they default, and then take back tangible assets from them, once they default. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like living this. I'm living what John Perkins was talking about, Ecuador getting enslaved by the IMF and World Bank, and I'm watching my people, my client, my customers get mortgages given to them by Countrywide, who's run by Angelo Mozillo, who damn near went to prison for what he was doing with his Countrywide, the loans and the scammery that was going on.
That's
there.
such a shame. Damn near went to prison. Fuck.
Yeah. It's so that kind of got me going on the financial side of it. And then once everything sort of was in the process of collapsing, like 2009 and 2010, I took a job where I was selling a mid-rise condo project that had got about half built. And then the banks took over it, as they obviously do all the time. And then I was brought in to sell it. But there still was way more construction that needed to happen. So what was going on was that I was stuck in a sales office for 8 hours a day, kind of like you on the truck, and I was watching YouTube videos. I was watching David Icke, I was watching Alex Jones, I was watching, you name it. I was starting to get into Joe Rogan, and like Joe, I remember like people were like, well, what do you like about Joe Rogan or anything? Like, I like that Joe Rogan is having a conversation with Duncan Trussell about jerking off into multiple dimensions and what that would look like. And I was like, this is like the most insane, retarded conversation of all time. And I'm so into it. You know what I mean? Like, I was listening to that. So I started listening to Rogan. Not that Rogan really red-pilled me or anything like that, but I liked that. I liked that he would have people on that were funny and they could talk about crazy shit. But I was getting into David Icke videos, and and then I was reading a lot, and I had time. So that started me down that path. And then of just trying to understand all this stuff. And I had no intention of doing anything with it. I didn't, I wasn't going to write, or I didn't even, it never crossed my mind. I was working in real estate. That's what I wanted to do. And then in like 2015 or so, I was explaining to my mom some great conspiracy that I'd found. I was like, you got to hear this, because she's always very open-minded about this. And when I got done explaining it, she was like, what are you going to do? Like, that's great. What are you going to do about this? What's the plan? And I was like, damn, I don't know. I don't have a plan. I didn't know. I don't know. So I started thinking about it, and I decided maybe I could, I was thinking that, like, so much of the things that I had found that people had said in public, that they were quoted as saying, either on video or written quotes. So much of this stuff I never heard before. I never heard people talk about. I never heard George H.W. Bush talk about the New World Order like 200 times on camera and things like that. I didn't know about a lot of this stuff. So when I was coming across all these quotes and things like, like a prime example now is like Prince Philip saying that when he dies, he wants to come back as a deadly virus to wipe out, the population. And that's something that doesn't wind up on your nightly news, but that's something that is attributed to Prince Philip. I mean, apparently he said it. So I started like collecting all these quotes, and that became the format of the Octopus of Global Control. It became this book where I used all the quotes from people to paint this picture of what was really going on, and I did that because I couldn't find these quotes ever on like mainstream media or anything like that, and I felt like, God, it sure would change things. I mean, it sure would change my opinion about some of these people if I knew what they were actually saying. So that's how I came into it. And then as far as just like, and then the irony is that David Icke being like, a huge person that brought this information into my awareness, and now my show is on David Icke's
network.
platform.
Yeah, that's so cool, man.
Crazy to me, And I just love those guys over there at Iconic. They're phenomenal. So it's been a weird trip. So I'm just trying to do what was done to me, which is wake people up. And someone woke me up with this interesting information, and I'm glad they did. It changed my life. It made me see things differently. It's been very, it's very confusing early on, as you probably know. But you get all this information. It's like, oh God. First of all, it's like, oh, what do I do with it all? And then it's like, God, some of this stuff I wish I didn't know. And then it's like, well, that's a problem too, because if I start saying I don't want to know things, then that's not good either. So then it's like, okay, I'm going to keep my mind open and accept all this information. But then it's like, how much of this information is even true? And then you have to go through all that. So I try to stick to the stuff that I can prove and stuff that is real. But I'll be honest with you, I love to geek out and think about like if there's a hollow earth and stuff like that. I haven't written about it, but I'm fascinated with the secret space program.
Mm-hmm.
Like that stuff is interesting to me. So I'll watch those videos and get into it. Now, does it mean that I believe every single aspect of it? No, not necessarily. But it's like conspiracy junk food for me.
Yeah.
Like I like it from time to time. It's really good to like think about. Hey, I've been on Jaren's show, Jarenism, a couple times, and so I like to have that thought experiment about what if the Earth is flat. I don't think the Earth is flat, but I'll talk about it. Like let's like, what if it was? Like, holy shit, could you imagine how destabilizing that would be? Like I'll geek out and do that stuff and talk about that. But am I going to write a book about the flat Earth? I'm not. But but I will acknowledge that one of the things that I discovered when those guys had me on the show was that I don't know geometry at all, apparently.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, so you take the isosceles triangle and the angle of this, and it should drop by X. I'm like, fuck, if you say so, man. I don't know. I forgot all this geometry stuff years ago.
Yeah, I mean,
so
I've listened.
That's where it was for me. Like it was incremental. I didn't have any one thing that necessarily like jolted me awake, except that it was just sort of like 9/11 in general, and you start to kind of pick around at that, and you're like, holy moly, and then that leads you to like, well, if 9/11 was a lie, what else was a lie, and then who knows where you go from there.
Oh my God. Yeah, I've listened to all those kinds of shows and stuff like that, and I like to, think about Hollow Earth and Flat Earth, and if there's a Hollow Earth beneath the Flat Earth, and how that would even be possible, or
Yeah.
just shit like that. But one thing that some people might consider to be conspiracy junk food and stuff like that is, for me, is occultism and like Luciferianism, Black Cube of Saturn, Freemasonry, like all of that kind of stuff, and kind of like the more esoteric knowledge stuff. I have books by Manly P. Hall and Albert Pike, and all of that shit, and so that's what I'm really interested in. And in that first Tinfoil Hat episode that I listened to, you were referencing this banker or businessman or something like that, and he said that he was, confronted with a decision that he had to make about, like, if you do this to this child, then, you'll be catapulted into the spotlight, or like you'll be wealthier than your wildest dreams. And I was just wondering, like, do you remember that specific instance that I'm referencing here, or could you explain?
Yeah. It's a Dutch banker named Ronald Bernard, and he came forward in an interview and said, I have been a banker, a high-level banker for many years, and has made a lot of money, had made some, compromised myself in some ways, and that he had gotten to a point where there was a group ceremony that he was involved with, and it required him to ritually sacrifice a child.
Jesus Christ.
And he said he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It was like the final step of this initiation, to be in this club. And he said he couldn't do it. Now, I'm not there with him. I don't know him. I can't verify that 100%. But I will tell you this, that if you watch the video, and I think the video is still available, although who knows these days, he was very convincing to me. He was very emotional about it. He was it looked real. It could listen, I fully accept that there's fuckery afoot in all the things that we're exposed to, videos, writings. It's hard to tell what's real and what's not, but this guy looked real to me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about how that was sort of the next step for him, and it was a step he couldn't take, and he decided that he would speak out about that, and he knew that would end his career, which of course it did. But I was like, God damn, like, this is, it's hard for us to understand these occult components to it, these rituals and things like that, because to me that stuff doesn't matter. Like, I'm not into it. I don't think it's that important. But what I've come to realize is that stuff, it doesn't matter what I think about it. It doesn't matter if I think it's invalid or not that big a deal, or these guys are all just putting on togas and going out into the woods and burning a big owl and stuff like that. Like, it's silly. It doesn't matter if I think it's silly. These people all take it very seriously.
Yeah.
They believe it, and it's important to them, and it's part of their ritual. It's part of their culture. It's part of their group. And so I've had to kind of get myself trained to not be dismissive of stuff like that just because I think it's kind of silly and goofy, but to just acknowledge that they take that stuff seriously. So there's a lot of that, a lot of occult components to this, a lot of people trying to gather energy for their own sort of whatever they're doing, their rituals, or trying to gather energy to give them strength to go do something usually horrible to humanity. So I've been watching that, like a lot of people have. I've just been watching to see, like as an example of something, the opening ceremonies of CERN
Yep.
The Large Hadron Collider in the borders Switzerland and France, and it is it's this big scientific place. They're smashing atoms together. It's on a 17-mile loop. It's cost billions of dollars. It's all underground. It's science, sciencey stuff. So when they have the opening ceremonies for this, it is straight up occult ritual magic going on at this. It is. You watch it and you're like, what the fuck am I watching? and then the next question is, and how is this appropriate for all the kids and family that are in, you can see them they're doing a parade and there's people watching and clapping and you're like, what is going on here? Mm-hmm. And then you go, well, I must, I don't know, it must be something I don't understand. And then they walk by the big statue that they built at the entrance, and it's Shiva the Destroyer of worlds from the Hindu religion. And you're like, so all of the possible statues you could have put out there, you chose Shiva the Destroyer. What are you guys doing here?
Yep.
So they speak in
code
symbols, and they speak through rituals, and they speak through these ceremonies that they do, and it all seems like nonsense until you realize that there's something going on there. Then you go and turn on the Super Bowl and you see the halftime show and you're like, oh my God, this is the same thing. The opening ceremonies for the 2012 Olympics, directed by Danny Boyle, where they have all of these children in this elaborate opening ceremonies with all these beds, huge beds, and children in beds, and these giant big monsters that are coming to get all the kids that are in the NHS hospital beds. And you're like, what kind of fucking dystopian acid trip psychotic maniac designed all this? And then you watch the VMA awards and the same thing, and you're like, okay, there's something going on here.
Yep.
There's something going. It is undeniable that there's something going on here. And so, so when you hear a story like Ronald Bernard's talking about, the Dutch banker, and he's talking about the ritual sacrifice of a kid. Now, if this is the first time you're coming across something like this, it's instant disqualification. You just automatically dismiss that. You go, that's crazy. That sounds nuts. Why would bankers be involved in this? It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any sense. But once you see this stuff over and over and over again, and you start to notice who's involved in it, and you start to notice their relationship, and you notice that the banking, establishment is very tightly connected to the UK government in places like, in the EU, and they have, and you start to see, well, Princess Beatrix of the Netherlands, and and all these, you've got a Dutch banker who's telling these stories about these horrible things, and then you hear stories about Princess Beatrice of the Netherlands having these human hunting parties and everything, and you're like, okay, all of that stuff individually, one by one, sounds crazy, and it's easy to dismiss it. But when you start building this case, this portfolio of events and people that are involved that are telling very similar stories, it becomes increasingly more difficult to dismiss a lot of this stuff. Now, I'm not trying to say that all of it's true, because there's certainly some people that have taken
too far
creative liberties, but you don't even need to make that stuff up, because there's so much of this stuff that's out in front, out in the open, that it's hard to ignore. And Ronald Bernard was one of those stories. It was like, man, the first time I saw that video, I was like, I hope this guy is I hope this isn't true. And then after the second or third time you watch it, you're like, if it isn't true, perhaps we should consider a nomination for an Academy Award for this guy, because this guy is really acting in a way that seems very genuine to me. And I don't know, but and of course, in these days, you never know what you're getting. But if that guy's a big fake and a big phony, then I fell for it, and I admit it. But I don't think he is.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's super convincing. I remember the interview. I just couldn't remember his name, but they asked him, it's like, well, what'd you have to do? And he's just like stammering and puts his hand over his mouth. He's like, there was a child. It's just like, oh my fucking God, dude. And he starts going on about that stuff, and it's like, holy shit, how real is this? And then you have people, again, in the Q community, who are like, Uma Abedin and Hillary Clinton ripped off a child's face, wore it as a mask, scared the living shit out of them, and drank their blood for the adrenochrome. And it's like, maybe, but but like, how can we verify any of that? And how do you have so much detail? And I was listening to Tinfoil Hat, and Ryan Dawson was on, and he said that on the dark web that video is available for people to see, and that he's seen it. Now, he didn't directly say that, but Sam was like, wink twice for yes, wink once for no. And he winked twice, so he was implicitly saying that he's seen it. But, again, how do we verify any of this and stuff like that? But, I mean, situations like that, it's like, all right, well, ritual sacrifice could actually be a reality, and then you look at all of these celebrities and movie stars and athletes, and Kanye's mom dies right before his big career, and all of these other superstars that have very convenient deaths right before their superstardom. But I wanted to start getting into your new book a little bit. So if you want to give like a brief rundown, then I want to get heavy into the financial aspect.
Sure. Yeah, the book is called The Controlled Demolition of the American Empire. I wrote it with Jeff Berwick from The Dollar Vigilante and Anarchapulco, and it is making the comparison between the way you would take down an actual building, the way that demo teams take it down with, pre-weakening the foundation. Pre-weakening the building, identifying support columns, rigging the detonators, ringing the alarm bells, pushing down the plunger. So we get into these things, and then within each one of those main 8 core chapters, we then go into a variety of things. So if I'm talking about something like pre-weakening of the building, we'll do a chapter about NAFTA and some of these trade agreements that were like that happened in like the mid 90s to America, where they outsourced all their manufacturing to Asia. And we describe that as being like lighting a 25-year fuse that will blow up the economy, but it won't happen right away. It takes a while for that all that to be felt. So that was sort of the premise of the book, and we got into a variety of topics. We should have been done in March of this year of 2020. I mean, we were pretty close to being done, and we thought we were just going to finish it all up and get it out. But then Corona hit, so we stopped for about 5 months, waited to see how that played out, and then wrote even more about that, and then just went back in and infused it throughout the book. So the book finally came out on the Friday before the election, and on election day, Tuesday, so like 4 days later, it was the #1 bestseller. So that just happened to be like one of those cosmic things where like the timing worked out great. And what's funny is that during this 2.5-year process of writing the book, the biggest frustration I had was the timing. I wanted the book to come out sooner. I wanted us to I was like, Jeff, finish this part up, please. Like, I want to get this out. And he's like, it's missing something. He couldn't put his finger on what it was missing. And in the end, now that I look back on all of it, the timing was perfect. And I was so frustrated about it. So what do I know?
Wow, yeah, that's, I mean, imagine if you put out the book and then the rolling lockdowns and all of the authoritarian control and all that stuff, and you're just like, holy shit, I
missed all that. Yeah. We would have missed it all. Yeah, it turned out that our instincts about stopping for a couple of months were right, and it's worked out. It's worked out great in that sense. My reason for wanting to get it out sooner was, my feeling was, the sooner the better as far as waking people up to it. But had we put it out in February or March, like in February, I was in Mexico with Jeff for the Dollar Vigilante and Anarchapulco Summit. I was one of the speakers there, and I did a presentation about the book because we were almost done with it. And I identified what I thought would be, one of the triggers for a collapse as being Deutsche Bank.
Yes, for the canary in the coal mine.
For sure, and I still think that they're a huge problem to watch. But Jeff and I couldn't have imagined the Corona situation.
Oh yeah.
We imagined quite a bit. Don't get me wrong, but we didn't think about that. And then right after it broke out, I was talking to James Corbett and who I'd met at an Acapulco, and I said, hey, I want to have you on my show. Would you be interested in like a couple weeks? And he was like, yeah, of course. And so that a couple weeks was between the middle of February when we met each other and the middle of March when everything kicked off. And so we had a really good discussion, but we were just kind of guessing, as far as where this thing goes. And he was saying this is medical martial law. It's just a more devious form of that. In fact, he put out a video March 22nd, I think, of 2020 called Medical Martial Law 2020. And he used a clip from our interview in it when he was on my show, but we were talking about this, and it was really interesting to see how his brain, James is so fucking smart.
Oh, yeah.
It's just interesting to see where his brain went with that, because what he was talking about was he was saying things like, wouldn't it be devious if
I was hoping you would say this because this is my favorite part of the podcast that you're referencing. So go ahead.
Wouldn't it be crazy of them to say, we've had this lockdown, everybody come in, and then after a couple weeks it just lifts and everybody goes back and they say, all right, it's done. We've done, we've gotten away from it for now, go back out. And everybody went back about their lives, and they were like, oh yeah, I remember the lockdown. It wasn't that bad. We just watched Netflix and we hung out and we didn't have work for 2 weeks. It was like spring break, except we couldn't go anywhere. And then James goes, and then what if, like, when winter comes, they're like, oh, lockdowns again, everybody, and then everybody just goes running back into their house. They're like, oh, here we go again. We get more Netflix. And he goes, but this time they never let you out.
Yep.
And I was like, and he goes, and I don't even want to put that out there into the universe. He says, part of me doesn't want to put it out into the universe because I don't want to give them any ideas. But he's like, but I know they've already thought of this. I know they've thought. And I'm like, oh yeah. But so just to hear that as a possibility, this medical martial law, and he was right.
He was right. And they're gearing it up all over again, man. I mean, I got family in Chicago. I'm about to go out there for Thanksgiving, and I'm driving, not flying, because they literally have, like U.S. military members at the airports in Chicago and New York, making sure people are quarantining for 14 days. And like, you cannot get a flight back out of there if your 14 days isn't up. Yeah, so I'm driving in and driving out. I'm not fucking flying, and my sister was begging and pleading because she wanted to come back down with me and spend some time in Texas, but I'm just like, dude, I will not fucking fly for the life of me. Yeah. But I mean, that's what they're gearing it up for, man. You can already see, like, at the local Walmart. So they stopped counting people in and out. Now they're back to counting people in and out, and they're drumming up more cases. And it's just like, here it comes. They're drumming it up for a second fucking lockdown. And, I always think about that James Corbett podcast. It's like, the second one. And then you also have Bill Gates. He's like, the second lockdown or the second wave, that might get their attention. I'm just like, holy fuck.
Yeah, they know something we don't know. That's the thing. That's what 2020 has been for me. It's been me watching people on television or on my computer, these trusted establishment goons, and thinking to myself, what do they know that we don't know? Because they're saying it in a way that is, when Bill Gates is talking about a second wave and saying, that'll get their attention. That's a dude that knows something we don't know. I find myself in this weird paradox where I'm listening to what they're saying, and I'm simultaneously discarding a lot of it because I don't trust these people, but I also have to account for the possibility that they know something we don't know, and that they're kind of rubbing it in our faces a little bit right now too. So it's like I'm conflicted. Like, on the one hand, don't listen to Bill Gates under any circumstances, but he might also be sort of telling you what's coming in advance too. So, and I think he is. I think that's a dangerous individual.
Well, and then speaking of that, like all these documents and stuff like that, you know, you got Event 201, Clade X, and then you got the Rockefeller Lockstep, which I kind of wanted to explore because in the Rockefeller Lockstep document, it says, you know, Politico, or I can't really remember the source, but they come out and they say the world is bankrupt. And that's when they start ushering in like the Great Reset. That's when it all is supposed to start going down. And so like we start talking about the financial aspect to all of this, and you know, I listened to Peter Schiff, and I know that Jeff Berwick, I was listening to your guys' podcast and he called him Peter Schill. So, like, whatever, I don't know, like, what angle he's coming at from that. I know that some people have criticized him for being such, like, a gold bull and stuff like that. But, I mean, like he's talked about the coming stagflation. The Fed is printing way too much money. Trump's increased the deficit by, like, $4 trillion. And then, you know, they're going to have to start jacking up interest rates to stave off the complete crash of the dollar and, like, all of this stuff. So we're looking at stagflation. We're looking at, like, at the very least, horrible inflation. And then they're going to have to raise prices in the grocery store and all these kinds of things, and all of these people with the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in college loans, and those are unbankruptable. I mean, you're just going to be suckling off the government teat, and what it all comes back to for me is they put people in this situation, and I know you probably agree, for this exact moment, because now there's nowhere else you can go but daddy government.
Yeah, for sure. This is part of the plan. The plan is to, I mean, if you follow the Great Reset plan, they need this current system to be removed. They need everything to be bankrupted, society to be bankrupted. As long as you have a functional society that isn't perfect but still works for a lot of people, it's hard to sell them on this new version of reality, this Great Reset. But if you destroy the current system so that it's garbage, and now you're offering the Great Reset, now people are like, okay, I might be interested in that. What are you offering? Tell me about this fourth industrial revolution. And you're like, you know, so it's not, in order for you to want this new thing, they have to break the current thing. And that's what they're doing. That's why we're seeing these government maniacs like Lori Lightfoot talking about how we have to pledge our allegiance to the New World Order. Mm-hmm. Like, she's so dumb, she's so bad at her job and her game of being this person, this authoritarian goon, that she gives up the plan on camera and isn't supposed to. Yeah. Talking about the New World Order and shit like that. These people have been promised something. They have to have been. I mean, I don't know what it is exactly. I'm assuming it's, you know, some sort of like high-level position inside the Biden administration, if that actually winds up being a thing. But they've been promised, these governors that have locked everything down, that have put out these insane statewide mandates, and then get busted constantly violating them. This is a psychological operation. This is designed to make us feel like we are in one class and category, and they are above us, and they can do something totally different. And it's like, I'm running out of patience with people. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to just grab them and just grab them by the fucking ears and just say, watch this. Watch what's happening. You're no longer allowed to just be, you know, ambivalent about this stuff. Like, now's the time to give a shit, because these people are trying to put us in a fucking cage, and they're not going to let us out. And this is, you know, and it's all you conspiracy theorists. You're talking about all this crazy stuff. Listen, this isn't even theory. This is conspiracy analysis. This is watching them, listening to their words, listening to their dictates. Guys like Cuomo and these guys. I'm not theorizing about this stuff. I'm just analyzing the stuff, the things that come out of their mouth and what they're talking about. And what they're doing is they're telling you one thing and doing another thing. They've been doing that from the beginning. This is part of, it's a tactic. It's a psychological operation tactic.
Limits to Growth by the Club of Rome. In that podcast that you talked about, that book, man, that was so, you like nailed it point by point. It's like, dude, they literally laid this all out for you back in the 70s.
Yeah. And that is, I mean, I don't know if you want to call that a code of ethics on their part, if it's part of the agreement that they have with their, I don't know, God or whatever. But there is some component of this where they feel an obligation or maybe a duty or maybe to tell you what they're going to do before they do it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very upfront about this. And that's part of the reason why the Octopus book worked so well, was because I could go in and I could pull out the things that they told you they were going to do before they did it. And it's so easy to be dismissive about things like that. But then, when you hear, big bankers saying we will have a one world government it's either going to be by conquest or by consent, you're like, well, shit, maybe I should listen to these people. Maybe they're, it's easy to go, oh, you tinfoil hat wearing nut jobs with your New World Order talk and all that. It's like, no. I'm not talking about the New World Order. I didn't name them the New World Order. They did. They named themselves that. Would you like to see ample evidence of them talking about this gigantic conspiracy, this gigantic plan? It's all there. So, that's where I get frustrated, is with somebody that's like on the outside of this, that has no knowledge and has done no investigation into this, telling me that I'm crazy for talking about the New World Order when they don't even know how often that has been talked about by people that they worship, the people that they think are great. When Bono, I love Bono. Yeah, I love you too. Hey, listen, I like you too as well. But that fucking guy can't be trusted, okay? And he's talked about all this stuff. And the Pope is talking about the New World Order, and the Queen is talking about it, and the Prince Philip, and John Kerry, and at some point you're like, okay, this is real. Like, they're all.
Oh, and I feel like the NWO now has an AKA as the Great Reset, and then you have Justin Trudeau come out, and he's laying the whole thing out for you. He's like, yeah, Great Reset's going to be great. Like, we got to do that, and and then you have Klaus Schwab. He wrote a whole fucking book about it. I mean, just listen to what these people are saying. They're telling you.
The irony is that if you go to Amazon and you look for the controlled demolition of the American Empire, and then you scroll down a little bit, one of the books it suggests that you buy with it is Klaus Schwab's book.
That's perfect, actually. Wow.
Like, buy it. Yeah, buy both of them. Read ours first, then you get about halfway through Klaus Schwab's, you can throw it in your fireplace.
Oh my God.
Because it's all a gigantic lie. I mean, it's all a sales pitch for this global one world government that they want to sell. And that was kind of our point in the whole thing with the controlled demolition of the American Empire, is that they've told us, through their writings, that they have a problem with these existing superpowers, and they can't put their plan for a one world government into action as long as there's existing superpowers. So 30 years ago they took out the Soviet Union, and now they've set their sights on the American Empire. So it's not even so much that they're like, they just have to weaken all of these other countries so that nobody challenges them. And this group is based on this concept of the Great Reset, and it's like, it's like a sales pitch for Elysium, like the big planet, the big thing circling above Earth, where all the rich people go to live, and it's paradise, and it's all that. So that's the sales pitch. The sales pitch is that. What you really get is District 9.
Oh yeah,
that's reality.
Oh yeah,
that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get giant praying mantis bug-like people stuck on Earth with you, and you're going to be, living in a garbage pile. That's what they have planned for us. It is not good, and I don't know why anybody would be believing the things that these globalist maniacs are promising, because they don't do a very good job on delivering on their promises anyway. So, Bill Gates says, oh, we're going to vaccinate the world and we're going to make everybody healthy, except that, he gave 500,000 kids polio in India, and they threw him out of the country, and he's killed even more in West Africa. So it's like... But
Snopes says that's BS.
Yeah, Snopes says it's BS, so I guess it's BS.
Yeah, right?
Nothing to see here, people.
Dude, that shit kills me. You look up things that are blatant fact, and what I always tell my friends, they're like, oh, well, Snopes said this. I'm just like, you could go read the Club of Rome, you could go read the Great Reset, you could read all of these documents, and then Snopes will have a thing that says, is Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, Gavi, and the WHO trying to create a Luciferian hellscape? No. It's like, well, like, of course they are. They fucking tell you exactly what they're doing, and then they incorporate all of this weird occult bullshit and stuff like that. And then, so it's just like, well, you were talking about the Large Particle Hadron Collider and stuff like that. It's just like, dude, it's right out there in the open. And then I'm trying to figure out how they're gonna get their martial law, because to me, Alex Jones was talking about all that stuff back in like the first SARS outbreak, and you know, he was wrong, but now they literally do have those camps in New Zealand. They have those quarantine camps, and in Australia, it's complete authoritarian control. And so, and Max Egan always talks about, he's like, hey, this is the testing ground. You know, they test it out over here before they bring it over there. And so I'm thinking, like, are they gonna do it with Corona? Are they gonna do it with the election? Are they gonna do it with the complete collapse of the economy for people to start rioting, there to be mass civil unrest, and then they have to usher in the martial law and taking people to their individual quarantine camps? And that sounds like way far out, tinfoil hat conspiracy, but it's not as far off as some people may think.
No, and especially when they disguise it as helping you. Especially when they disguise it as you know, they'll use food as a weapon. They'll lure people into, you know, hey, well, listen, you know, we know that times are tough and nobody's got any money and nobody has a job and everybody's out on the street, and like, hey, listen, we've set up FEMA camps for people that, you know, like, this is our version of a hurricane, and FEMA comes in to save the day when there's been a hurricane. So we're gonna open up these FEMA camps. If you guys want to come in and you need a place to stay or you need some food or whatever, and they're gonna get people in there, and they're never going to let them out.
Yeah,
that is something that they that is a possibility. But they'll spin it in a way. Now, when you say, like, they're going to march you into FEMA camps and, you know, in rail cars and stuff like that, like World War II, that people go, that'll never happen. I would never get into that rail car and things like that. And it's like, well, think of it like this. It'll be the proverbial rail car. You might not have to actually get into a train to get to these places. They may just make it so untenable in this society where you have no choice but to go ask for help, and the help will come from them, but there'll be strings attached. I mean, the things that the World Economic Forum is talking about is cashless society and universal basic income, where you don't think that universal basic income is going to be tied to some sort of criteria that you have to follow, like you have to be up to date on all your vaccines, you have to be a member in good standing with a high social credit score, things like that. Listen, they'll make it. I mean, the government's giving out free money. The government is trying to figure out ways to steal all your money through taxation. When do they ever give you free money? Well, they give you free money if they want something from you. They want compliance. They want you to do what they want. What they want you to do. They want you to be where they want you to be, or not say the things. So there are a variety of creative ways that they could trick people into participating in this. And if they make things bad enough, which clearly things are pretty bad, but headed in a bad, even worse direction, then you're gonna find people that are low-hanging fruit, that trust the government blindly, which is absolutely stupid, but there's plenty of people out there to do it, or people that are really desperate and they're like, I have no choice but to go do this. It's like, all right, well, you got to take the vaccine. Mm-hmm. Fine, whatever. You're gonna give me $1,800 a month in UBI, I can pay all my bills and everything. But then, like what you said earlier, then clearly these people don't know anything about economics, because then if the government is just printing up free money, just $1 trillion of free money, it impacts the purchasing power of that money. It inflates away the value of it. So great, you're going to get, let's say, $1,800 a month every month, but now a loaf of bread's going to cost $30. So you're not really it's not $1,800 that you're used to. It's a new version of that. Oh, and by the way, it's only available in a digital currency from a Fed coin, from the Federal Reserve coin. So we can now monitor where you are and what you're buying and what you're using it on and all these things. So this is we're headed into a dystopian nightmare, mm-hmm. and we're like on the bow of the Titanic yelling like, there's an iceberg right in front of us, and everyone's going, stop being an alarmist.
And you know,
I can't not say what I see.
Yes.
What I see is chaos. If I was to say, "Oh, everything's going to be fine," I wouldn't be an alarmist anymore. But I also probably wouldn't be accurate with it. I'm scared about what's coming. I mean, these people are evil,
and they're relentless.
And they're totally relentless.
Uh-huh.
They take a long-term approach to this. They have unlimited amounts of money. They have the mainstream media.
They have contingencies to any variable that could happen.
Yeah. They've taken the step of deplatforming people that are talking about inconvenient truths and things like that. And
Prophesize in Event 201.
We're having an impact. You know, clearly we're having an impact if they want to ban it. But it's like, that's a moral victory, man. We need like an actual victory, because if they start deplatforming everybody and nobody can talk about this stuff, how are we going to get the word out? It's very frustrating.
And Jimmy Dore talks about, he's like, hey man, the people that are screwing you over right now have names and addresses. He's like, I'm not saying do anything crazy. He's like, but if we really want to take back this country, we have to show up to where they live and tell them what exactly we want. And I'm just like, hell yeah, man. And, you know, Jason Burmis is now, he's, you know, leading the charge. He's like, the Great Reset? How about the Great Resistance? He's like, now is the time. He's like, they have their boots on our necks, their gun in our mouth, and they're about to pull the trigger. If we don't do something now, it's all over. And I'm just like, yeah, hell yeah, man. Because if we don't start taking steps to do something, you know, I've already been protesting at the state capitol in Austin, Texas, over like 5, 6, 7 times already. And it's like, how every time I show up, you know, there's less and less people. And it's like, dude, if we don't take control here, they're certainly going to.
Yeah. And Chris Hedges, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Chris Hedges, has this great story about how he talks about the scene in the White House, in the Oval Office back in the 60s, when Nixon is in there and he's with Kissinger. And they've put buses end to end all around, surrounding the White House to try and keep these protesters away that were like climbing the fences and things like that. And in this scene, he's saying that Nixon is saying to Kissinger, Henry, they're going to get us. They're going to break down the walls and they're going to come in and get us. And Chris Hedges says, that is where you want politicians to be. That's the headspace you want politicians to be permanently, where they're always worried that the people are going to come and get them. And what we have right now is a bunch of politicians that aren't worried about that.
Not at all.
No repercussions for them. There's no reason for them to be fearful or alarmed at all, because the people aren't coming to get them, and that's the problem. Now, I'm like Jimmy Dore. I'm not advocating violence or anything like that, but I am advocating for the option for violence if that because they have no problem. The state has a monopoly on violence. The state has the ability to use violence against you for a variety of reasons. But the minute you try and rise up and use violence against the state, they consider that to be immoral, unbelievable, a crime, and met with fierce resistance.
Yep.
But we need them to realize, we need to remind them of how this whole thing works with representation by government officials, and that is that they are supposed to represent us. They're supposed to work for us, and that has been tossed aside a long, long time ago. So keeping them, fearful. Look, who's good at protesting? Surprisingly, the French.
Yeah.
For all the criticism they got in World War II for being, laying down. They do a really good job with their protesting, and that Yellow Vest protest was going on for like a year, and they were really freaking people out with that. So that stuff can work if you do it the right way. It can work. It can make them feel very uncomfortable. I don't like the riots, of course.
Yeah.
But I did like the protesting. But of course, in this current environment that we're in, we just see that the protesting and the riots just get blurred together, and they lump them all into one. And then, Rachel Maddow tells you what to make of it all, and you're like,
yeah,
I'm out.
And something you've hypothesized, or fearfully at least, and you've just talked about, dude, what if they bring in the UN? That's worst case scenario if UN troops start showing up. And then, we were talking about Henry Kissinger. Dude, he said back in the 90s at Bilderberg, he's like, if we brought UN to the U.S. right now, it would be met with fierce resistance, but in the future, they'll welcome it. And it's like, holy shit, it's the future right now, Henry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Henry Kissinger also said that the world's population should be reduced by 50%. And in my Octopus book, I followed that up with a line, well, that sounds like a good idea. Let's start by cutting Henry Kissinger in half.
Yeah.
So, that he's a scary monster. You want to talk about deep state swamp monsters, possible reptilian? Definitely Henry Kissinger. I mean, he even looks like a toad.
How is he still alive? He's overweight. He's like 96 or whatever the fuck, and he's just still kicking.
I don't know.
And that's what we were talking about, is like the relentlessness. He's been at this for 50, 60, how many fucking years now? And he's still overweight, 96, pushing for NWO as much as he ever has. Yeah. I mean, in a weird way, you have to respect their commitment to the cause, even though the cause is not something we would want or respect. But these people, it's a lifetime pledge for them, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't think they ever get an opportunity to give it back. And that made me think, like when you hear, I don't know if you ever saw the Bob Dylan quote on 60 Minutes, where he was talking about, making a deal with the devil and things like that, how he has to continue working, because he made a deal with the devil. I always think about that when I see like the Rolling Stones going back out on tour again, and Bob Dylan doing this forever, and Henry Kissinger still selling this turd, when he's 96 years old and all this. It's like, man, maybe there's something to that. Maybe they did sign like a lifetime contract where they have to be a part of this forever and ever. Join a brotherhood. Yeah. Fraternal Order of Freemasonry, man. That's where my mind goes. Yeah, me too. I mean, I just think of this as being like some really dark club that you don't want to be a part of. Yeah, and, I feel like a lot of this hysteria was started with global warming, and then, Sam says, like they couldn't get what they wanted with global warming, so then they did coronavirus, and it's the same shit. And now they're saying, with the lockdowns and everything like that it's, reduced carbon emissions and stuff. Yeah. And if you go to realclimatescience.com with Tony Heller, he does a fantastic job of laying it out. He's like, dude, fucking 20,000 years ago, we're bitching about 400 parts per million. Oh my God, we can never go back. 400 parts per million carbon in the atmosphere. We're all going to fucking die. Oceans are going to boil. Glaciers are going to melt. All this stuff. Complete horse shit. But then if you go back 20,000 years ago, there were 8,000 parts per million carbon in the atmosphere, and that's when we saw some of the biggest growth we've ever seen in this country, in the world's history, in terms of species and plants, and everything was just so vibrant and healthy. 8,000 parts per million carbon. The oceans were boiling. Everything was fine. But now, and even in ice ages, like some odd thousand years ago, the parts per million carbon was 4,000 in an ice age. Now we have 400. We're worrying about oceans boiling. Like, it's complete horseshit. And I think you nailed it on the head. What they really want to do with all this, carbon credits. They're going to stiff the working man with the carbon credits, but then ExxonMobil and Shell and all of these fucking corporations, they're going to get the waivers. They're not going to have to do any of that. You got it. They're gonna they'll get exemptions for all that. It is not even my speculation that they want to roll out a carbon credit. It's in their writings. They talk about this stuff openly. They talk about what the plan is. The Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is part of this. The Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I think it'd be interesting for people, before they just go diving headfirst into accepting this Green New Deal and Fourth Industrial Revolution and all that stuff, it'd be interesting for people to know that the lady that's in charge of the technology component for the Fourth Industrial Revolution and this Great Reset is a lady named Isabel Maxwell, who is Ghislaine Maxwell's sister. Yes. So it's like, if you're wondering who these people are they trustworthy or not, just know that Ghislaine Maxwell's sister is part of this group running it, and she comes from a spy family, and this is the tip of the iceberg. I mean, she's not even close to being the worst person involved over there, but it's just oh, she's there? Yeah,
welcomed there, totally and utterly accepted by this group of people. And the carbon tax is their plan. It's the funding mechanism of this new world order. They're going to set allowable carbon limits for corporations and later individuals. You're allowed X number of, parts per million that you can expel per year, and if you go under that, then you'll have a little bit of an allowance in your carbon allowance wallet, let's say. If you go over it, then you have to pay an additional tax. It's like the salary cap, and it's like a hard salary cap in baseball or something. Like the Yankees, if you exceed the salary cap, you have to pay like a fine. You have to pay a tax on it. And if you're under the cap, or if you're under this carbon cap, you can sell your excess capacity on the open market. So Wall Street's going to create a new casino game called carbon taxes, cap and trade. They've already done this. This is what the guys at Enron went to prison for. They were rigging carbon tax scams and things like that. But that's what they have planned, and they're going to use this whole carbon tax that you pay, that the government just created out of thin air, limits on all this stuff, and they just literally created a new concept out of nothing and said, we're going to be the police of carbon, and we're going to set limits, allowable limits on this, and if you exceed it, then you have to pay a tax on it to us. And everyone's like, okay, so with that tax money, you're then going to fix the problem, right? And they're like, no, you just need to pay it to us. And first of all, taxes have never fixed anything anyway, but they don't talk about their plan for fixing anything. They're just keeping this money. You paid, you exceeded this, you're a bad person, you hate the environment, you hate the planet, you hate grandma, you're trying to kill her, you've exceeded this, so we're going to tax you on it. And then Wall Street takes all these tax credits and creates a whole new market for them, a whole new marketplace that they can rig. Like they rigged LIBOR and Forex, COMEX, and did the gold spoofing. All these things these banks have been found guilty of in court and have paid billion-dollar fines. So they're all convicted felons for rigging marketplaces. And what is the carbon tax? A brand new marketplace that they can rig. And who did they say is going to be in charge of running it? Goldman Sachs. Goldman fucking Sachs. Okay, so it's criminality on a scale that we can't even imagine. But it's so important to them. This global warming / climate change scam is so important to them that we'll never hear the end of it in our lifetimes. We will hear about this forever. Yep. And I'm not saying, look, I'm on this planet just like you are. I want everything to be well. I want things to be what they did was they hijacked all of the negative things and all the legitimate horrible things about pollution, and they claim that as their own. They claim that that's global warming. It's not. It's pollution, and we need to get a handle on that. And everybody's mad about when they're climate change is going to kill. What everyone is really mad about is pollution. They don't want to be polluting and everything. But that's not what these guys are fixing. These people have hijacked all the negative attributes of pollution, which are real, and they've said this is climate change. It's all climate change. Well, it used to be global warming, but then the temperatures went down and they had to change the name because it's hard to sell global warming when there's cooling going on. But so they said, let's call it climate change. Then we're covered either direction. Yeah. And this is going to be one of the biggest scams in the world. And people, but they're smart about it because they prey on people's sensibilities. They prey on people's like, I don't want to hurt the planet. I'll do whatever you say as long as I know that I'm not responsible for killing this planet. Much like 2 weeks to flatten the curve. You don't want to kill grandma, do you? I'll go inside for 2 weeks. Oh, if it means that I'm not out killing grandma or spreading, co-conspirator in the spreading of this virus, fine, I'll stay in for 2 weeks. How did that work out for you? Mm-hmm. It worked out like garbage. And they keep it going forever. So this paying your carbon tax thing will be the same sort of scenario. It's a scam. I want us to clean up pollution, but the Green New Deal doesn't fix pollution. The Great Reset doesn't fix pollution. The Agenda 2030 doesn't fix pollution. It just fixes us. It just puts all of us in places where we can't move, and then the elites have the rest of the world to themselves, which is what they want. And for people, I don't understand why they can't understand this, except I guess it's because they don't know how evil these people are, and so they don't assume that anybody could concoct something so this massive. But it goes back to that Hitler quote, tell the lie, make it the big lie. This
Yep.
is the big lie. It's just make it big and bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, and what I was thinking of when you're talking about the carbon credits, and if you go over, you got to pay the tax. Well, what I'm thinking is if you stay under, like, say you get an allotment of 100 carbon credits, and then if you hit, 75 for the year, like, oh, good job, you only hit 75. We're going to reduce it from 100 to 75. It's like, wait, whoa. I hardly ever drove my car. I barely did any of this. I tried to be as responsible as possible. It's like, yeah, so keep doing that so, you don't boil the oceans and everything. So, we'll decrease it to 75 because you only use 75. And then, the following is like, oh, climate change is getting even worse. We got to reduce it down to 30. It's like, I can't even drive my car then. And so, I feel like that's how, it's going to be the constant evolution. Like you said, it started with 2 weeks. Now it's been 8 months.
Yeah.
So it's just, they're just going to roll with it.
Yeah. That's exactly how they would do it too. And think of it like this. Then they'll also want to tie it into your social credit system. So if you are exceeding your carbon allowable limits, then your social credit score, which they already have in Shenzhen, China, and they're rolling out worldwide, your social credit score, kind of like your current credit score now, which is like a number that goes up, it goes down, depending on what you do. Your social credit score will then be tied to this as well, so that if you are exceeding your capacity, your score is going to go down. You're not going to be allowed to get on a train or get on an airplane, buy an airplane ticket or anything like that. You're going to have to have a score within a certain range. This all sounds theoretical and crazy right now in 2020 in America, but this shit is happening right now in Shenzhen, China. We're not talking about something that may or may not happen. This is what they want. It's just a matter of when they're going to be able to roll it out, and it's all tied in together. It's all these systems are working in conjunction with one another. This great reset, this social credit system, UBI, cashless society, self-driving cars, zero carbon emissions, all these things they're all connected together. It's sold with this amazing sales pitch of, look how great this is going to be. Everything's going to be zero carbon emission. You're not going to own anything, and you've never been happier. You're going to rent it all from the New World Order, and blah, blah, blah. Man, don't fall for it.
Yeah, that's what I talk about all the time, man. It's going to be the track trace database. And, you've got DARPA. They made a video back in 2018 about hydrogel, about how they can inject U.S. soldiers with hydrogel, and it will track all their biorhythmics. And, it'll be a good thing because we can track soldiers before they even get sick, so we can pull them off the front line, get them well again, put them back out there without them ever even having a symptom. This is back in 2018. Now, with Pfizer and Moderna coming out with their vaccines, it's like, well, who's to say that there's not some DARPA hydrogel in that? And, that's another part of the track trace database. And Whitney Webb has been going on podcasts talking about how they now have smart meters in the sewers to track everything that's being excreted from you in your shit and piss. They can find drugs, they can find the foods that you're eating. So there's a healthcare angle, which is especially dangerous if we get universal healthcare, because then the government cracks down and is like, we see in your area there's a high consumption of sugar and processed foods and GMOs and everything like that, so we can't really provide universal healthcare to you because you're not living sustainable practices, and you're going to make it worse for everybody else. So then you're out on healthcare. And then it also has the war on drugs angle, where they can be like, we have a concentration of cocaine or heroin in this community, so yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, and it's always for your safety.
Yep.
Of course. Yeah, and Whitney's done great work on this, and she's over the target, which is why she's taking a lot of heat from people. I've had crazy conversations with her about stuff like this too, and they always go on for like hours.
Yeah.
But it's coming. It's coming our way. It's coming our way. We can look in China. We can see how they've started this process, you know, what's really frustrating is that it used to be that like America would look at China and say, or like the American government would look at China and go, man, they're doing it so different from us. We don't want to be anything like them. But now we're looking at them, at least from our authoritarian government standpoint, and they're going, I like what you've done here. I like that you've locked down this whole community. You've instituted social credit systems. This is great. You've got facial recognition cameras everywhere. Not just regular CCTV cameras, but the facial recognition cameras. They've got 400 million of those already in China, and more, millions more coming on, you know, every week. So,
and our government says we need that on steroids because we have to be better than China. We have to have more charge rates database. We have to have more cameras, more control, because or else China's going to win the war on technology, and we just can't let that happen. We have to be the first to AI and all of that bullshit.
All of that bullshit, yeah. And who's in charge of that? Eric Schmidt.
Oh yeah.
Mr. Google is a gigantic bug. It should only give you one answer. Yeah, that guy. I feel like we're at the precipice of this massive transformation of society that is disguised as
a virus.
Yeah, exactly. Disguised as a virus. It's the pretext is this fake virus, this great marketing sales pitch. And I work in real estate. I've worked in real estate for 20 years and worked for developers and things like that. It reminds me of a developer sales pitch of a new high-rise building they're going to build. It's this great picture. We can't show you any actuals because it's obviously not there yet, but it's going to have X, Y, and Z. It's going to be blah, 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 blah. And you get all these people to sign up, put in deposits for this building, and then what you do is you value engineer the building. You go, okay, how can we make it look just like the building that we sold to everybody, but not as expensive? Let's take this out. Let's take that out. Let's shorten this. Let's move this around. Let's move this. Let's renege on the idea of having like a full scale 50,000 square foot gym there. Let's make the gym more like 12,000 square feet. Okay, let's do it. You know, and they go to work on it. And then by the time it's built, it's nothing like the sales pitch. And you're like,
damn.
It looked a lot better when it was just on the brochure than it is right now. And that's because developers are greedy and rich. They want to get you in the front door, and then they set about to try and figure out how to really just change things to make it a little bit better. And then there's fine print in the contract that you sign that says, you know, some things are subject to change. You know, and so I would think that there should be a gigantic asterisk on this Great Reset. It should say the Great Reset, and then a big asterisk said some restrictions may apply.
Right?
You know, because that's like what it is. It's a big commercial for something that is not going to turn out the way they talk about it. And then by that time you'll be like, oh well, I guess this is the Great Reset. Oh, what are we going to do about it? Trust the plan.
Yeah.
You know.
And I made a 4.5 hour expose on Corona, and so I've just had it up to here when I walk into the store. And there's like, sir, could you please put on the mask? I just want, like you said, I just want to grab their ears and be like, how are you still believing this? How is this still a part of your worldview? There's been so much exposing it. The 94% number, 94% of people died with at least 3 other comorbidities. Stanford did a whole fucking research thing. 1 in 19.1 million chance of you actually getting corona and dying from it. Like, it's endless the amount of information that you can find and use to prove that this is a provable hoax, a provable scam, to usher in Agenda 21/2030. I mean, that's exactly what it's being used for, and people still can't get their heads around it. And for me, I don't even think that there is a virus. I think, and what I wanted to ask you about, dude, this has to just be a giant Operation Mockingbird media scam for the whole thing, because the cases, the PCR test, Carrie Mullis said that it shouldn't be used as a diagnostic tool, and you know, that's all just being left out of the discussion, and it's just get tested, then they ramp up the cycles to whatever, you know, number that they want it to be. If they want more positive cases, you know, they'll ramp it up to 45. If they want less, they'll ramp it down to 25, and all of these other things. And at the end of the day, it's just got to be the media constantly saying, be scared, be afraid, wear your mask, and just comply.
And if the media wasn't, if we didn't all have a television or a computer in our houses with this mainstream media feed, we wouldn't know anything was happening. We wouldn't know. My mother-in-law got tested, my mother-in-law got sick and then got tested, and then they said you have coronavirus. And she was down for the count for about a week, and she's 75, and she got out, and then she was fine. I'm like, well, how bad was it? She's like, I felt pretty rotten, and I lost my sense of taste for a couple days and everything, but, fine. Okay, so we're talking about, this is like that age range where it's supposed to be the most susceptible and everything, and she was fine. We're not talking about the Black Death. We're just not. And if we didn't have the media, we wouldn't be talking about anything. In fact, I think that it was I think the psychological operation component of this really was laid bare when in June, everything had kind of died down and nobody had masks on, and people were going to the grocery store and businesses were reopening, and we were like, okay, all right, we're finally getting back to some semblance of normality here. And then all of a sudden the mask mandates kicked in. It's like, oh, everybody's got to have a mask. Got to have a mask on. You can't get in the grocery store without it. And you're like, why would they be doing that? Oh, I get it. It's a visual representation of something now. Now you've got a mask on, so now you see other people with masks, and it's like virus. Okay, the potential for virus. But if I didn't see people with masks on, and I just walked into a grocery store, I would have no reason to think that there was anything unusual going on. But when everybody has a mask on, then it's impossible for you to not think that there's something happening. Now, the something that's happening is a giant psychological operation, of course, but you can't pretend that it's not happening when you see everybody with masks and people saying, you need to put your mask on, and things like that. This is so it was like they needed, once things started to die down, they were like, oh, how do we get everybody scared again? Oh yeah, let's make sure everybody wears masks. That way then it'll be real again, because it was starting to become unreal. It was starting to become like not a big thing in June. People were like, I'm good, the sun's out and I'm going back and we're opening up work, and now here we come. And we knew it would get weird again when the winter came. We knew that they would pull out all their tricks, but here we go again. They're literally running the same play. They're saying, well, we've got to be careful. We've got to have these lockdowns because our hospitals are getting overrun, and we're like, oh, are you honestly fucking doing that again? You're doing that stupid thing again? Let me guess what comes out next. Everybody in the UK stands out on their balcony and bangs their pots and pans and claps their hands
for the nurses,
for our workers, and then we get TikTok videos again. I mean, I can't wait for TikTok videos again from all the nurses. I mean, this is, I am constantly in this conflict between being super angry at the media for having the audacity for lying to us about these things, and equally being frustrated with all of the people that just blindly go along with it.
Yep.
With no introspection at all, no ability to take a look at any of this information and go, are we really doing the right thing here? Like people are just put the mask on. Oh, get back in my house. Oh, lock my store up. All this stuff. Man, we need a culture of non-compliance. I think we would be a lot better if we had a culture of people that were just like, I'm not doing anything you tell me to do just because you tell me to do it. If it makes sense to me and I agree with it, fine, I'll do it. If I feel like I'm in a vulnerable category and there's this deadly flu going around, I'll stay in my house or I'll wear a mask. You do whatever you need to do to make you feel more comfortable. But don't start telling me what to do. You know what I mean? Don't tell me to wear a mask, lady in the grocery store. I will fucking snap on you. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to walk out of that grocery store after having a fight with somebody? Like, oh, this is terrible.
I'm really happy I just told off that 6-year-old woman.
I know. It's like, I don't want to be that guy, but at the same time, like, I have a problem with you feeling so comfortable that you're going to walk up to me, not knowing me, and telling me what to do and that I need to put a mask on my face. And because if we want to have this debate, I'll destroy you in the debate, lady. But we're not going to have the debate because you don't want to hear what I have to say. You just want to tell me to wear a mask because Anderson Cooper told you to wear a mask, or Fauci told you to wear a mask, and those people wouldn't ever tell you that.
Oh, but before he said not to wear a mask.
Exactly. That's the thing. It's like wear a mask. Okay, do you want me to wear the mask that says on the side of the box does not prevent the transmission of coronavirus? What if I put a bandana over my face? Will that make you happy? The least scientific thing in the world. Yeah, that'll make that lady happy if I put a bandana over my face. And then it's like, so we've just admitted that this isn't about science. It's about compliance. It's about doing what you're told to do. And I have a real problem doing what these people tell me to do. I just am defiant. I'm just a prick when it comes to that stuff.
Yep.
I'm just difficult to deal with when it comes to that. And my wife is like, "Why are you so difficult with this?" I say, "Because it's the principle. She's like, "You could put a mask on to walk into the grocery store." I said, "Of course I could. It's the principle behind it." She's like, "Okay." And I'm like, "This is a thing for me, you know?" And I know that a lot of people, it's not a principle thing for them. They don't care. They think they're helping, or they don't understand this game, or they don't, you know. But to me, it's about showing other people that I refuse to participate in this. And I've had I've done it where it's like, you know, "Oh, you want me to put the mask on?" I put it on like this. Is this good? You know, and then and they're like, "No, it's got to be over your nose and mouth." "Oh, what about this? Is this good?" "No, it's got to be over your mouth, your nose too." How about fuck off? How about don't tell me what to do? You know what I mean? So I get like to that point real quick with people, and I'm like, this is probably not healthy for me, but I can't help it.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm understanding this gigantic scam, and I want. And the flip side of that also is that when people see you out in public without your mask and they don't have a mask on too, they're like, "What's up, man? Like, good for you." You know, like they give you a little nod.
Yeah.
And look, if I thought wearing a mask was going to save one person from something, then maybe I might consider it. But this is all theater.
Yeah.
We're all pretending. We're LARPing. We're role-playing. We're pretending that we're saving. We're pretending that we're hiding from a virus. We're walking down the aisle of this grocery store in one direction, but not the other direction, because we don't want to I mean, it's so absurd. And when you point out the absurdity to people, they think you're the problem.
Oh, yeah.
That's where my frustration is.
And the last time my girlfriend and I flew, I think it was back in June, we flew back to Chicago, and they would not let us on the plane without a mask. And so we had to wear the mask, and I would only put it over my mouth. I straight up can't breathe if it's over my nose. I don't know how people do it all day. If it's over my nose, I can't fucking breathe. And so I would never put it over my nose. Every 5 minutes, "Sir, you need to put it over your nose." They'd tap me on the shoulder, and I would pretend to be asleep, and they would jostle me awake and be like, "Sir, you need to put it over your nose." And then so when we landed, we were getting off, this woman was like, "You guys need to put the mask over your nose." And we said, "No, thank you." Kept walking. They called security on us. They called yeah, no, that's how serious it was back in June. And so that's when I vowed off. I'm like, I'm never fucking flying ever again. And then they were, you know, what you were saying, they were, hospitals are exploding with cases. Well, in Austin, Texas, you know, I work for a uniform company. We service these hospitals and we wash their scrubs. So I would go into the laundry area, picking up the COVID scrubs from the COVID ward, and the bags were super flimsy. Like, what? I didn't know. I'm like, why are these biohazard bags? They fucking open and tear open so easy. So I would grab them. They would tear open. They spill all out, and I had to pick them up. And I'm handling these COVID uniforms, these scrubs, putting them in the bucket, and then I never got coronavirus. When I was handling all of these COVID uniforms, and people were saying that COVID could live for 5 days up on surfaces. It's like, when was that ever real? Because I never got any symptoms, no nothing. Oh, but I might be asymptomatic. You know?
Which is code for you don't have it.
Exactly.
And if you accurately and logically and rationally and calmly explain this to somebody, they think you're nuts.
Oh, yeah. And
it's the power of the media.
I was listening to this one podcast. They're kind of new. It's called Truthzilla.
Yeah.
And, you know, they live in Eugene, Oregon. And, you know, I'm glad I live in Texas, where people, they'll just kind of like let me be and they won't give me too much grief. They say in Eugene, Oregon, man, they will get kicked out of the grocery store by the customers of the grocery store. The employees, the people shopping there, they will fucking brutalize you if you do not put on a mask. And I'm just like, I could not be in that situation if I were those guys.
Yeah, I live in Denver, and I walk in to the grocery store down the street from our house. I walk in without a mask. I get what I need. I don't talk to anybody. I don't look at anybody. I do my thing, and I go through the self checkout, and I just walk out. And I'm waiting. I'm waiting for someone to, confront me about it. But I haven't had that pushback. I haven't had the massive pushback. But every time I go, I have my guard up because I feel like it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
But some places are more, I guess, more into it than others, and those I don't know. It's so frustrating. It's like I'm so disappointed in the humanity for not picking up on this and not recognizing this overt, blatant, obvious scam. And I get it. Like if the first month you weren't sure or you didn't know, that's fine. But by this time, like at this point now, it's like what's everybody's excuse for this? Like,
mm-hmm.
and I'm sorry. The scare tactics of saying 18-year-old kid perfectly healthy died of COVID. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go Ferris Bueller on you and be like, yeah, just roll his dead bones up here in front of me. I'm gonna have to see it with my own eyes, before I believe one of these scare stories in the media. The same mainstream media that is pathological in their lying about starting wars and presidential campaigns and their views on whistleblowers. The disgusting, shitty corporate mainstream media pathological liars that lie to you about everything else. But yeah, everything they're telling you about coronavirus just happens to be true. It's frustrating, and I want to
Especially like the Trump supporters, man. Like when I see someone wearing a Trump mask, and I'm just like, dude, he says fake news. And now you're gonna believe, you're gonna wear the Trump mask and parade around like you're scared of coronavirus when the only people saying that this is even a reality at all is the mainstream media. And then, people say, oh, how could everybody be in on it? And it's the same thing with 9/11. How could there be so many people in on it? And then with COVID, oh, all the doctors, all the nurses, they're all in on it. They're all pretending. It's like, no, dude, you introduce the PCR test that everybody has to fucking use. And then you give hospitals incentives, $39,000 per coronavirus case. And then, people start going along to get along.
Yeah, it works. It all works itself out. It's not... You just have to make different incentives for people, and they'll follow along with us. And 9/11, same thing. People, how could everybody keep this secret? My grandfather worked on the atomic bomb at Oak Ridge. He did not know what he was building until after it had gone off. They can keep it secret if they want to. You don't need to know the full plan in order to be a part of the plan. And so yeah, this is just it's a litmus test. Also, 2020 has been a litmus test to see how gullible and dumbed down people are. I mean, I joked about this in a couple of shows, but I'm almost not kidding when I say that, like, if Fauci had come out and said that because of the weight of the virus, it likes to hover at about a 4-foot level. And it based on the atmospheric pressure and everything, they gave a whole scientific thing. And I said, so really, it would be best if you were on your hands and knees crawling into these grocery stores. I'm not kidding when I say that there would be a percentage of the people that you would see crawling on their hands and knees into the groceries and out of the grocery stores, because they're just too fucking dumb for this planet.
Yeah.
They're just too gullible, and they're just too willing to believe all this stuff. And they call us conspiracy theorists for this, for believing unusual things. Yet they're willing to do almost anything because Dr. Fauci told them to do. I mean, and I don't know how your feeling is on this, but my guess is that you're probably experiencing some of the same feelings that I am with regard to the corona situation, and that is in the vaccines, where I've talked about them, I've talked about how dangerous they are, I've talked about whether the lack of lawsuit or the lack of accountability for them because of these laws and all the and I've been very nice to people about the corona situation, about the potential vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, and do I get it, do I not get it? And I've tried to be nice and explain to people the history of vaccines and what they're all about. But I am losing my patience with people, and I am now increasingly becoming I'm getting more and more on the side of, if you want the vaccine, then fucking take it. You want to tell us how we're all crazy, how we're all conspiracy theorists, we don't know, how we're anti-science, we're anti-vaxxers, we're nuts, we're dangerous people. But you've done no research on this at all. Zero research at all, except what you've watched on your television, and you say that the vaccine is good. Then fucking get it. Be the first person in line. But I don't want to hear any complaining. I don't want to hear any complaining from all you people when you have really bad repercussions from this.
And you turn into Man Bear Pig.
Correct, exactly. You turn into Man Bear Pig, and that is on you. I don't want to hear the complaints, because we warned you about it. We talked about it. We showed you actual evidence of what has been happening in the United States with regard to the vaccine epidemic for the last 35 years since they legalized that. We've talked about all this. We show you stats. We show you doctors that have come out and spoken out against it. If you choose to be ignorant to this, then it's on you.
You want to take something experimental as an RNA vaccine? Never fucking made one before. There's problems with existing vaccines that they made for fucking decades. Now they're gonna roll out something that they've never done before, and then you see these reports of people having these that are in the trials having these horrible reactions, and one woman's bleeding out of her eyes, or like whatever the fuck is going on. And it's just like, oh yeah, I want to take that because Pfizer just came out and said, oh yeah, we got a 90% vaccine. My nurse friend sent me that article. And then you look into Pfizer, oh yeah, they had to pay the biggest fucking, what is it called? Settlement. Yeah, they had to pay the biggest settlement, like $2.4 billion for false marketing shit. It's just like, oh my God. And here they come out and say, we got the best vaccine. And then Moderna comes out, no, we got the best vaccine. It's like, dude, look into these companies. They are not they're not the angels that they're pretending to be.
They're all convicted felons.
Yes.
Literally convicted felons in courts of law. They've paid out billions and billions and billions of dollars to settle all the fraud, criminality that they've been in charge of for decades. And they have the vaccine exemption, where if that wasn't in place from 1986 through that law, then they would be getting the shit suit out of them like they were in the early 80s. So this is...
Yeah, what do they pay out? $4 billion every year? And that's the cases that actually get through. How many other cases, like you're talking about, because of the vaccine bullshit from Reagan's administration, if that wasn't a reality, how much more would they have to pay? And I was listening to Del Bigtree, and he was saying that they did a study at Harvard, and they cut the study off at they found 1% of the actual number that they were looking for, and I don't know, it was like something like 200 deaths were attributed to vaccines in 2016 or 17, and if they extrapolated that out from that 1%, then they would have gotten around 40,000 deaths due to vaccines in 1 year. Now, if we're going to talk about more people are dying at the hands of vaccines and way more children than the gun deaths, which is actually, the huge problem in America. All these gun deaths. But where are all the school shootings? Where are the people shooting up the grocery stores? That all fucking stopped because now there's Corona. We don't need that boogeyman anymore. We can put him back in the closet. So we don't need the gun argument anymore. We just need coronavirus. But, 36,000 gun deaths in America. But you want to talk about 40,000 deaths related to vaccines? People's minds would fucking explode. And so, it's just the fucking hypocrisy all over again, man. It makes my head spin.
Yeah, and the fact that the industry that's going to administer the vaccine for you, the American medical industry, is the third leading cause of death in America.
Yep.
The American medical industry.
Medical error, right?
Heart disease, cancer, American medical industry.
Yeah.
So, forgive me if I'm a tiny bit hesitant to go rushing to be the first person to get an experimental vaccine that hasn't been fully tested, that is a vaccine run by the big pharma, which it has its own problems to begin with, that there's no liability on because they bribed Congress in 1986 to pass that. And you want it to be rushed, administered by the military.
Yep.
And it all sounds so appealing to me. But it's like, if through that mountain of questions, all these different aspects, you still think that it is fine to just go line up and get that, then I kind of just say go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Just go have fun with it.
And all these people are like, oh, if we just get the vaccine, we can go back to normal. Fauci has come out and said, he's like, even if you get the vaccine, this is going to be a seasonal thing. We're still going to have to wear masks in perpetuity. I don't know when we're going to have to stop wearing masks. So even if you think, I get the vaccine, I don't have to wear masks anymore, we go back to normal. There's still going to be plexiglass at the fucking restaurants and at the fucking countertops and the businesses and everything like that.
And they know that people hate it. And they know that people will be like, there will be a certain percentage to be like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going. Then I'm not going to that restaurant. I'm not getting on that airplane. But that all feeds into it, because if you don't do that, then you are making the collapse happen faster too, and therefore laying the groundwork for them to build this great reset on top of the ashes of our current society. So, so that they're devious little fuckers, and they've thought about this, and we, like you and I have thought about this too, but the vast majority of people haven't even considered the fact that this could be some sort of operation, that there's more to it. They are blissfully ignorant and still think that we're going back to normal after this. We are not. This has been too effective for them. It's been too easy for them to enact change through scaring us all with this virus. This is going to be one of the tools that they use for a long, long time. I mean, just like terrorism. They use terrorism for, the better part of 20 years. Well, really longer than that. But after 9/11, the terrorism was ramped up because we can get a lot of things done with this. We can scare people into accepting things like the Patriot Act and Department of Homeland Security and TSA and all that stuff that sprouted out of this fear. So let's just keep the fear cranked up to 11, and then when we do that, then everybody will be so destabilized that they'll just allow us to do whatever we want. And then once terrorism is burnt out, then we'll find something else. I don't know, like a virus and another invisible enemy. That we have to spend trillions of dollars trying to fight and hide from, even though the statistics show that it's not very dangerous. So,
and how convenient, for Trump, he's got Kavanaugh in there who had a hand in writing the Patriot Act, and now he's going to have a hand in writing, whatever other coronavirus legislation is going to come down the pike. And so
the plan, everything's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And then you look at Bill Barr and all of these other goons, Goldman Sachs, and he had John Bolton in there for the longest time. I mean, at some point, you said you were getting fed up with people. All right, you want to take the vaccine? Go ahead. Now with me, I like a lot of these Q guys and everything like that. But dude, if you don't fucking stop with the trust the plan bullshit, it's like you're gonna fuck us all up. Because right now, you got the Q people trusting the plan, and then you got all of the people on the left. They're all like, "Oh, this is great. Joe Biden's in, so everybody's content right now." You got people following the plan. You got people happy because their guy won, and so we're just in this state of homeostasis. We're just not gonna do shit.
No, perfect. That's what they want. They want a bunch of people not doing anything.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished.
And so I guess we'll start wrapping it up here. I could talk you all day long, man. But like, what I want to ask you, because I know you're not a religious guy, and neither am I. I'm more spiritual than religious. Yeah. I don't subscribe to a particular religion.
Me too.
But in your opinion, what's really going on here? Like, what is the whole shebang for? Agenda 21, depopulation, total global control of all the resources. Why? Why do they want this? What are they working towards? What entity are they worshiping? Black cube of Saturn, angels, demons, Luciferianism? Like, in your opinion, why are they so relentless? Henry Kissinger level commitment to this process for decades and decades and millenniums and stuff like that.
I think there is, like, I'm not a religious guy. I'm same as you. Like, I'm interested in figuring out what's going on, what's happening here. But I also don't pretend to know, because we're little human beings and we're trying to figure out God and everything. But I think that so I'm not a religious guy who's like, oh, it's an important component of my life, where, like it is for some people. But I think that these people that are running trying to run the world, I think that they are connected into something much darker. I think that they have, I think it is a Luciferian agenda, and I say that and the reason why I say I'm not religious and why that matters is because I know that sometimes people that are really religious are like, these people are the devil, they're Satan and everything. That's their go-to insult. And my go-to insult is not to call somebody a Satanist or Luciferian or something like that. So when I use that term, I'm trying to be as specific as I can about it, because I don't, it's not like, oh, these people are all working for the devil. I think that these people are all on the side of a very dark force. I don't know if they've been promised something from this force. But there's a lot of writings about this. This goes back long time, thousands of years. This good versus evil type of thing. There are some very disturbed, evil people in this world. I think that they have a Luciferian agenda. I think that part of what that agenda is that they have to tell you what they're going to do before they do it, because we see evidence of that happening all over the place. And then their plan is to make it kings and serfs, where they're the kings and we're the serfs, and we're down here on the plantation, or we're on the, we're in this feudal society where we're having there's two different worlds happening on the same planet. There's one that is just totally different, and it is excess and whatever you want, do what thou wilt, and all that shit. And then there's this other, like the masses of humanity down on the reservation, too dumb to figure it out, no respect from the people above them, cattle for them. They write about us being cattle. They write about their relationship with us as being, they are a controller species and we are beneath them. And I'll tell you, man, sometimes when I go to Walmart, I can understand where they're coming from.
Oh, yeah.
You see people and you're like, these people are fucking worthless. And so I feel like I'm all obviously on the side of the goodness, but I want to shake a lot of the people that are just blissfully ignorant and wake them up and be like, come on, man, like, you have a role in this. You need to wake up to what's happening. I find myself losing patience with with the sheep for being sheep, and much in the same way with the vaccine thing. It's like, fucking take the vaccine then. If you're so sure that you're right about it, then go for it. Let's see how you turn out later. And these people that are like, blissfully ignorant about what's happening and acting in a way that is making them look like I'm watching the behavior of most of the sheep and I'm going, no wonder the elites want to get rid of all of us. Like, I don't fucking blame them in some components of this, and I'm not trying to side with them at all, but it's like, man, I look at a lot of people and just go, you're too fucking dumb to be a part of this whole thing. Like, so my point is, the people that are trying to control us are reprehensible scumbags that are deeply disturbed, very evil, and they have a different version of reality for us. But we need to take some responsibility for our own actions as well, and not make ourselves such easy targets for these people. We need to prove that we are better than what we've been. they want us off the planet because they see us as useless eaters. And like, some people are behaving like they are useless eaters, and it's very hard to defend them against these globalist maniacs. But it's like, so I have the bulk of my contempt is directed at the ruling class and for what they do. But I still save a little bit of that for the class that's being ruled upon. I'm still very frustrated with them and want them to like snap out of it and like participate, and like we need to change our behavior, because as long as we're blindly accepting this, of course they don't respect us. I'm starting to not respect us either for being so willfully ignorant about this stuff. So we have a role in this. We have to participate. We have to be awake. We have to rise up to this, because these people aren't going to stop. They're not going to stop doing what they do. We're going to have to stop them. Now, how we go about doing that, that's up for debate. But the first thing is, and the most important thing, is we need to wake up a whole lot of sleeping people. And maybe coronavirus is going to be the thing that wakes a lot of people up, like the way 9/11 was something that woke me up. This is where we started the conversation. I guess we'll sort of kind of wrap it up and end here too. Is that 9/11 woke me up to the insanity of all this, so that when Corona came around, I had experience and I had the ability to draw on things I had seen or remembered in the past and find these patterns that are showing up throughout it. Maybe the Corona situation will wake up a new generation of people that then when the next thing happens, they'll be like, this is bullshit. I've seen this before with the Corona thing. This is what woke me up. They did the same thing. They ran out the same plan. They had the same guys talking about the same things and how we're all going to die. And global warming is going to kill us in 12 years. I've heard this before. I've heard this over and over again. And so I'm hoping that this situation, that if we're looking for something positive that has come out of this 2020 coronavirus, scamdemic thing, maybe the one thing that comes out of it is that it wakes up a huge percentage of the population to what's happening. My fear, though, is that it might be too little, too late. And that unfortunately is. That's why we do these shows, though. That's why because we're talking. I don't know who's going to listen to this. You don't know who's going to listen to it. It might be. It might be people that this helps change the way they view. It makes them view the world in a different way, like that's more accurate. And I'm down for that. I'm down for that. The conversations with everybody that will spark something in them that'll wake them up to this. Because I know I was watching, like we were talking about earlier. I know I was watching David Icke. I know I was watching Alex Jones, and we can talk about. People can talk about Alex Jones being compromised, and I get that for sure. But he did have a role in waking a lot of people up. The things that he was talking about were changing people's perspectives on things. And, I can't tell you which one of those conversations did it for me. It might have been incremental. It might have been just building upon, one video after another video kind of helped to wake me up. But, you and I have, a role in this. We have a responsibility to talk about these things, even if they're, even if it's not fun to talk about, even if we're talking about a dystopian future, because these conversations have the potential to wake people up, we got to keep doing it. We got to, and we have to have action too. I'm not trying to say that just talking about it is the only thing we need to do, but like any good addiction counselor will tell you, if you first have to acknowledge that you have a problem. And we're trying to get people to acknowledge that we have a problem. And so the first step of that is definitely a conversation about it. Where it goes from here, where people decide to, invest their time and energy to try and, like you're doing, you're down at the State House in Austin, and you're doing that. First step is awareness. Second step is doing something about it. So I feel like these conversations are necessary because we never know who's going to hear it. It's impossible to quantify the sort of reach that we have these days, and how what we're talking about is going to impact someone. But we just know it's going to on some level because it's impacted us. This is how information gets spread around, and some information's good, some information's bad. But for those that are worried about are the things you're talking about, are they accurate? Are they bullshit? Well, just look at the reaction. of social media to the people that are talking about things, and they're getting them deplatformed. I would say, are they deplatforming people that are talking about, Elvis eating ding dongs at a Winn-Dixie someplace? I mean, those stories you can talk about forever. But how come when you talk about vaccines, they'll deplatform you? Mm-hmm. Is it because it's all lies, or is it because it's all truths? Is it because we're talking about things that are that are inconvenient to the establishment system? So I'm down for the conversations. I'm glad that we're doing this. I'm glad that we're able to talk about these things, and we'll put it out and we'll see where it goes. And hopefully people wake up to this, because it's not hyperbole to say that, like, it's now or never. I know people have been saying that for a long time. The globalists are coming to kill us. We got to stand up now. I mean, boy, at this time, the tail end of 2020, like, if we don't make some changes, if we don't have our voices heard, like, they're going to steamroll us. And unfortunately with this, like, once we get steamrolled and they roll out Agenda 2030, man, it is all but over for us. So we have to be very diligent and make sure that we don't put ourselves in a situation where this stuff is going to happen, and they'll push us as far as we allow them to push us. So it's important for us to jump up and say, this is my line in the sand. I'm not doing this. I'm not participating. Do not comply with unjust orders, man. Just do not comply. And if all of us do not comply, then they have no power. So it's important for us to remember that. We do have power. They'll try and convince you that we don't, but we do. It might not be, it might not be that much power, but when we get together collectively, we have more power than they have, because there's far more of us than there are of them. So it's not all doom and gloom. Mm-hmm. There's still optimism there, but it's like, now is the time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people feel that. And
what I'm reminded of, and again, man, like, you just say everything that I'm thinking and everything that I think is correct. These people are obviously operating under some kind of dark energy, whether it's Lucifer, whether it's Kronos or Black Cube of Saturn, whatever you want to call it. I mean, the devil has a bunch of different names. And, I grew up in Christianity, so how I express the terminology is like demons and devil and Lucifer, right, and shit like that. So, that's just the verbology that I have for those kinds of things. So when you say that, I completely agree. They're obviously, they are working with some kind of dark entity that has promised them, an afterlife or riches in this life beyond their wildest dreams, and they got it, and they're doing what Daddy says. But yeah. I'm reminded of this one Tinfoil Hat podcast with Ryan Dawson, and he was talking about how in like the late 1800s or early 1900s, there was this mountain where all these coal miners worked at, and this corporation had all of these guys working in the coal mines and shit like that, and the only places around where they could have a roof over their heads were these cabins built by the corporation. And then the only store that they could shop at was the store owned by the corporation. And they got paid in script from the corporation. So they couldn't go anywhere else and use this script. The script could only be used at the store owned by the corporation. And eventually, people were going hungry, unfair working conditions, 7 days a week, fucking 16 hours a day, breaking their backs in the coal mines. They said, enough of this bullshit. And they killed a couple of the overseers. They took to the mountains, and even the U.S. military got involved and started like dropping bombs and shit like that. And they held their own, and eventually, they didn't win, but it set a precedent. It said, if you fuck with us, we're going to unleash holy hell. And that's where rednecks comes from, because they had the red bandanas on their necks while they were working in the mines and shit. But, if they say, if you fuck with us, we're going to unleash holy hell. We're going to, do everything in our power. And even if we lose, we're going to set a precedent for times to come. And then you get all of these new regulations for workers' rights and how, there has to be a weekend and you can't work them more than 40 hours a week. And all of this stuff comes from one act of defiance. So that's what this community needs. We need to all get together in our different cities, get together with other like-minded people, and really bring the fire to these politicians' feet and be like, we're done playing this game. I've called all my local representatives and said that I'm done with the scam. The CDC has released all this information saying this, and I walk it through with them, and then they just end up hanging the phone. All right, That didn't work. It's time to go to his house. It's time to be like, hey man, like, we're not leaving until you start agreeing like with what we have to say. You represent us. Like, you're the congressman for my district. It's time to start representing me, because if you ask me, these elections are a sham. I mean, they don't actually count the votes. They put in whoever they want, whoever is going to be the new young gun for AIPAC or whatever it has to be. So it just takes one act of defiance for us to really start changing the course, and maybe not for us, but maybe for future generations.
For sure. And just to add one thing to that story about the corporation and the mining and all that. The corporation that owned that was doing all that, was the Rockefellers.
Circles back.
And after that, they created the Rockefeller Foundation because they had so much bad publicity from that. When they wound up burning those miners in the camps. They wound up burning those camps down and killing a bunch of women and children, and it was a massacre. And they had such bad press that they started the Rockefeller. They were told they should start the Rockefeller Foundation as a cover story. And who else has done that? Who went through really bad press and started a foundation like that? Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Yep.
After the Microsoft antitrust lawsuit, they started the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as a cover story to say, I'm not a devious, corporate scumbag maniac. I'm a philanthropist. And it reminds me of this scene in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where Charlie is trying to he's going out on a date with this some woman, and he's got his buddy is telling him, he's sneaking off from the date, and his buddy's sitting in the bar, pretending he doesn't know him, and he's saying, tell him you're a philanthropist. Tell her you're a philanthropist, all right? And he's like, okay, I'll tell her I'm a philanthropist. And he goes back to her, and she's like, so what do you do for a living? He's like, I'm a full-on rapist. That just reminds me, whenever I hear Bill Gates, he's like, I'm a philanthropist, I just keep thinking, full-on rapist, So it's you're right. If we rise up, things change. If we don't rise up, things change too. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's not in the direction that we want it to go. So look, I'm glad you had me on, because I like talking about this stuff. I think it's important. I think we need to sort of spread this awareness. I know it sounds, it's a bit heavy duty to get into these things, but it's like we have a cushy life here in America compared to some places else. We can deal with heavy duty. Yeah, it's a heavy duty topic. That's okay. We're gonna have to talk about it, because the problem is if we outsource this to the media and the government to handle, if we outsource our critical thinking and all that, they're not going to do a very good job with it. We're going to get more of the same. So like, we have to take responsibility for this, for the situation we're in. We have to change it ourselves. We can't sit around and wait for everybody else to fix it. Half the people don't even know that they don't even know the problem that we have, let alone how to get in there and advocate for us. So I think what you're doing is great, man. I think what you're talking to these people, and yeah, you're going to get hung up on for sure. These people are going to hang up on you, but we need them. We need them to hear us. We need them to fear us. We need them to fear that their job goes away if we are unhappy with their with what they're doing. And I think these days, right now, everybody's unhappy with what the politicians are doing. None of them, very few of them, maybe Kristi Noem in South Dakota.
Yeah.
People are liking her, but she's getting credit for talking about normal, logical, rational things, and everyone's like, she's the best. It's like, in comparison to the rest of these people, you're right, she's the best. In comparison to where she should be baseline. It should be normal. That
Uh-huh.
look, where she's coming from shouldn't be revolutionary. It should be like, this is, yeah, of course, no masks. Of course, none of this nonsense. Of course, we're not shutting all this stuff down. But unfortunately, the agenda speaks, and we see where they want us to go, and it's a dark winter.
Oh yeah, and fuck, that's a whole different topic
Yeah.
we could launch into. But Charlie, dude, I'm so glad I got you on, man. You're honestly on my Mount Rushmore of
Thank you.
dudes I love to listen to. I always think that you nail it. Your research is impeccable, and I'm just really glad we had to have this conversation, and I can't wait to talk to you again in the future.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
For sure. Have a great day, man.
All right, man. You too. See you.